7:06, we have quorum. We are going to start on our April the 2nd council meeting. Call to order. The agenda is before everybody. Again, a hearty welcome to Carol, our recorder, and is your recording device on? Just to double check. Good, we're good to go. And thank you to the gallery for coming. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Yes, a second. Any changes? Yes, Councillor Bain.
8C5, House on Community Forum. Council.
Forum, thank you. Councillor Rabbit, I thought I saw your hand. No? Good. I have 3, which under Mayor, which is none. Let's go Mayor 1, and that'll be the Events Committee updates. And number 2 will be Village Update Rotation. I've got a calendar here if anybody wants to see it before we get to that part, so if you feel lucky. And I would ask that under staff and any, I presume it's CAO or Public Works, if you could give us just a 30-second update on where we are with municipal signage. It could be less than 30 seconds.
Yeah, no heads up on that one. Could be less than 30 seconds.
Well, that's okay. Sorry, it was on the back of one of my pieces of paper. All right, any other changes?
Sorry, what number is that going to be?
But that would be, let's call it staff 4, A4. Okey doke. Any other changes, additions? Good, none? All in favor? Good, go. Public participation. 2 minutes. Mr. Cave.
Goodness me. I guess I'm speaking on the recent request for feedback from the public on the proposal by Metro Vancouver, it used to be GVRD, I guess it's some other moniker now, about banning, moving towards a ban of wood smoke emitting appliances. And I guess I'm against that because in Lions Bay, I believe our needs are very different from the rest of Metro Vancouver. Natural gas is not available in Lions Bay. Propane is an expensive option. Many residents still heat their homes with oil, although many of us have switched over to heat pumps. However, heat pumps are ineffective in cold weather, and electric heat is very expensive. And we often face long power outages in the fall and winter. So many of us augment our heating with wood burning source. At considerable expense, I've installed a low emission fireplace insert. And when that insert is up to temperature, and it's been professionally installed, by the way, Councillor Baines. At considerable expense to myself, I had that installed. And it's when that, and it's a low emission insert, and when that insert is up to temperature, there's no visible wood smoke signature coming from the chimney. It would be incredibly punitive if the residents at Lions Bay were the victims of an area-wide prohibition of heating from a renewable wood source. Now, burning wood is carbon neutral, so it has that advantage because. But there's one other aspect that I'm concerned with. Even though I have the wood burning insert, it would be up to me to prove on a regular basis and hire a technician to assert that appliance still meets certification standards. So it's not without cost. So thank you for letting me speak on that.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rabbit, any?
No, I think you echoed many of the comments. I've got a summary that I'm presenting fairly shortly in the early part of the meeting, so if you want to stick around and hear that, probably find it.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
You referred to an onus of proof on a person to prove from time to time that their appliance is compliant. Where did you get that information
I'm
from?
assuming that that's coming down the pipe.
I wouldn't think that would be on the person. That would have to be someone from Metro or an enforcement agency saying, charging you with illegal wood burning, and then you'd have to say, well, actually, my fireplace is compliant. So there wouldn't be an annual requirement. Everybody having to file something.
But it could go down that road. It may not be there now. Sorry.
Well, I'll tell you what I understand the plan of the conversation I had with them at the moment. You'll need to register.
Yes.
So if you have a well-known appliance that is on the list, there's a list of 600 certified appliance stoves of sorts, then it's done. If you bought one recently, in a few years you'll only be able to buy ones that are registrable because the point of sale will have to be in compliance. If you have an older unit or cannot prove that, then they didn't know the answer as to how that got certified. But it's not to say it can be. And I did speak to some wet technicians and I asked them, was there a simple device, a way to measure it? And the answer I got back was, no, they did not believe so, and it's a factory test. So how you would certify something that is not on the list or not, but didn't come out with an emissions, what we call matter rating, is unclear.
And that's the problem. I think the devil will ultimately be in the details somewhere down the road. And I don't know where. So that's my concern.
I think we can count on this being one of Councillor Abbott's chapters every couple of months. As to, I mean, it boggles the mind that the village would ever have to keep a registration of devices, and quite frankly, given the 23 committees in Metro and the thousands and thousands, I mean, this is such a make-work project. I hadn't even actually gone to that point yet, but I am on their climate action committee. My hand will be up next time. In the meantime, I think we're in very good hands with Councillor Abbott on this one. Thanks, Jim. All right, any other delegations? Public? Nope. Okay, no public delegations. Item 5. Which is review and approval of minutes of prior meetings, and we've got the special council meeting March 12th, just to get to the point of this. I'll put forward a motion to accept. Can I have a second? Discussion, any changes? I had none, as much as 2 pages, of which half of it's disclaimer. Call a motion, all in favor? Thank you. Good. Next up, the regular council meeting of March 19, which is on page 7. And again, just to speed this up, I'll put forward the motion to receive. Second, thank you. Discussion. Yes, Councillor Bean.
Under 7B, the recovering climate cost follow-up, I remember the motion was put forward, but there was no second, and that's why it died. But I don't see that in the minutes. Is it not necessary, or?
The last sentence was Mayor McLaughlin read aloud the following proposed motion, which was not moved.
Oh, not moved. I missed that. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Satisfied?
Yep.
Any other questions, changes, gone? Is that a motion, Councillor Conwell? No?
No.
Oh, is a hello to you too? Good. Councillor Abbott, you good? Good. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Moving on to business arising from minutes. I have one. Anybody else? Sorry?
I have one.
Yes, you first.
On page 10, Mayor McLaughlin requested the CRDO and CFO to provide wording regarding the type of projects that will be funded through single-handed infrastructure reserves. At the April 2nd council meeting, I think there was a lot of discussion about, in my mind, we almost linked the 10% to understanding the definition. I didn't see it anywhere here. Are we getting that today?
No.
Okay. There are a few other points on that. I'll bring it up in the 5-year plan section then later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Mine and which is item 9A, which is the Rural Dividend Program. It's possible we haven't done that. Well, actually, a question, have we sent the letter out? Probably not. You're just back.
No, I started to gather the information and did not finish, so.
Not finished? Can we shift that to unfinished business?
Mhm, yeah.
Cheryl? So that's the rural, it's on page 13 of 184. It's the resolution rural dividend program. So that's the letter to Metro.
Yes.
Thank you. So that'll go to unfinished business, whatever number it is. Thank you. Any other business arising from the minutes? Yes, Councillor Bain.
With the one you just mentioned, I presume the answer is the same for DI. There was a council requested the staff consider the creation of a policy and report back to council on page 13. I presume we haven't had time for that then.
That's coming up in the
It's in
PO
the-
box.
It's in
on
the
agenda.
unfinished business.
Oh.
Got to read to the bottom of the page, Councillor Bain.
I
That
got
was a
two
friendly
glasses
comment.
coming.
All right.
But to, I'll hold you in suspense.
Technically, it wasn't the bottom of the page. Okay. Good. All in favor as the minutes as they are? Good. Done. Business arising, we've done. Unfinished business, starting off with CAO.
Yeah, so I haven't had a chance to look at that with Public Works Manager yet.
Thank you. Number 77.
Similar response,
Same for number 78.
yeah.
Thank you. And for items 79, 80, and 81, I've responded to all those. The bottom two are in our package, I believe. The other one I sent out the other day, shame on me. It'll appear in your next package. So we are a strike on 79, 80, 81. Okay, which brings us to, drum roll, staff reports. Item 1, CFO, draft 2019-2023 5-year financial plan, which starts on page 17. And the ask is that the report, which I just said what it was, be received for information purposes. CFO, you're up.
Okay, so as discussed last week, this is the 5-year plan, which we're required to do for the community charter. The base year is the 2019 budget that we've been discussing for the last couple of months. And then we basically estimate what the expenses are going to be for the next 4 years. A big component of that is the labor model, so we do a detailed labor model. We have to just estimate what the wage increases are going to be because the current collective agreement expires December 31st, 2019. So you can sort of see some of the assumptions I made about taxation and about expenses. And the idea of this is just to show that over the next 5 years with the capital we're anticipating, that we can kind of balance the budget. With regards to the capital, as we've done for the last couple of years, when we did our loan authorization bylaw in 2016, we were able to identify sort of 3 categories of capital. And the stipulation of the loan authorization bylaw is we would only borrow if we were successful with a grant. So again, I'm going on the assumption that this is, because this was based on the priorities of the infrastructure master plan, we would continue to be pursuing kind of this general idea of these capital projects. They'd be guided more by the grants that are available. So in the 5-year plan, I have this capital spread out over 5 years with grant revenue and loans offsetting it, so zero impact on taxation. But I have also calculated the cost of what the loans would be to support that infrastructure, and those costs are in the budget. I think this might be kind of pursuant to what Councillor Abbott had talked about last meeting, identifying projects in the future that we may have to fund in different ways, like not through the loan authorization bylaw. I anticipate in the next budget year, the 2020 budget year, we will start looking at projects like that as well. We're finding that the grants aren't coming as quickly as we had anticipated, and the decision making is taking longer than we thought. The loan authorization bylaw does have an expiry date, so I think this would be the last year that the capital is solely from the loan authorization bylaw, but then we'd start looking to other capital that we may have to fund ourselves in the future. So that forms basically the 5-year financial plan. I printed out again, sort of for the last perusal, the details of the 2016, and then the final schedule is the Schedule A, which forms part of the loan authorization bylaw. So, is there any questions?
There we go. If I can do it this way, I will put forward the motion to receive the report and ask for a second, and then we'll go to discussion. That's fine, thank you. Seconded, discussion for the CFO.
I'm just curious that the bylaw expires. When does it expire? And
The loan authorization bylaw? It's actually, loan authorizations bylaw are good for 5 years, so it
Okay.
expires December 6th. Oh, sorry, that's when it was adopted. Would be December 6th, 2021.
Okay, so that's just a common practice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we basically have the authority, public approval to spend that money over a 5-year period.
Okay.
Or sorry, get loans.
Yes,
Over a
yeah.
5-year period.
So there are sometimes opportunities to extend that,
Through temporary borrowing bylaws, that which we would explore as we got closer to
but
the,
otherwise you have to go back to
the public.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Basically, we had authority from the public for 5 years to borrow for what was identified in the bylaw.
okay, so that really is the nits of it. It's the public said 5, and it's the drop dead date, and anything else is
Well,
kind
it's not
of.
that the public said
Yeah.
5, sorry,
Well-
didn't mean to interrupt. But it's, the public said, yes, borrow for these purposes.
Right.
It's the statute that says you only have 5 years.
Okay.
Subject to potential rights to extend that.
Right. Through the MFA.
Or, you know,
Which, for another 5 years?
Pam knows more about that through
Kind of it,
GFOA
you can
than
get
I
what's
do.
called a temporary borrowing bylaw. They'd have to be the same projects that were in here, and the intent is, you know, if a project was coming up or a grant, it's not this dead date that you could extend it. We'd have to do a secondary bylaw, but you can link it to the authority that we got
Okay.
from this bylaw without having to go to the public again.
So in short, time's running fast forward. We haven't done anything substantially different than where we are. We're within a couple of months of the end of the 5-year term. We want to extend for a prolonged period for the same projects that we went to the public for. And so we here would pass the thing
Yes.
and
Yeah,
not
to extend.
necessarily involve the public.
Right, right.
Thank you.
And as I said, it's the grants are coming a little bit slower than we had anticipated, that
Okay.
it might be something we want to utilize.
Good, good. Councillor Abbott, I see you warming up over there.
Me? No one else want to go?
Well, your glasses are off and on. I'm just reading body language here, buddy.
I have a couple of things. I have one discussion that maybe is better suited for later, when we talk about the request for the first and second reading of the 5-year plan, but we could discuss it now. So I'm just not sure, I'm looking for a little bit of advice where to do that. And it's around communication on this 10% infrastructure thing.
I would ask that we do it now because we have substantially already voted on the 5-year plan, which is where we got to this. So I think if there's a piece that
Okay?
now is fine, if
Okay.
that's fine with you.
Sure. So 2 points. The minutes, as recorded, are not inaccurate. They were just kind of brief as to 2 things we discussed. 2 things we discussed in that section last week, to my mind, in a fair amount of detail. There was contribution from virtually everyone. One was how we define infrastructure. And it's not the way we approve the wording in the bylaw, I get that. But I kind of left the room thinking we'd approve something to borrow 10% as long as we agreed what infrastructure was. That's not the way it was worded, so we voted the way it was worded and it doesn't say that.
I suspect on this one, I get where you're going, and I want to come back to that. I handed Shauna the slip of paper, which is pretty much verbatim on this, so that is the right wording.
The wordings are not...
So, but I think your point is that the definition of infrastructure, and there was discussion about ruling from the grave on this too, with terminology,
Yes.
and for lack of a better word, what would be projects that we would, what we're in the fire line taxing for, that I think Councillor Bain said fencing or light posts or something like that, which might be deemed frivolous by us, but important to another council. So I want you to come back and zero on that.
Okay, there was talk about the infrastructure master plan. There's a consensus on that. Okay, I accept the vote was taken. Is recorded we really come to this meeting with a definition of infrastructure. I personally am not comfortable going ahead with this 10% increase if we don't have agreement what infrastructure is. And my second point is I think we need some public participation on this, and we should be telling the public what the infrastructure is, how we define it. Is it only what's on the infrastructure master plan? That might be a simple definition. That might be able to get us past this point. So I'm personally uncomfortable. I voted along with everyone else, but I'm uncomfortable we keep going forward with this unless we define infrastructure. I understand the CFO's concern about that ties us in or paints us into a corner or ties us up too much, gives us the flexibility. But I think there shouldn't be flexibility on what infrastructure is.
Two things, and again, in the spirit of this, I don't want to call a point of order here on this because the council unanimously have put forward the bylaw. So this is already in place and action's been taken in place to further that decision. But I think on your piece about infrastructure, if you can, if staff can give us some guidance on this, I'd be open to talk about that.
Well, in terms of the infrastructure, I did do some research. This is a very common levy now, taxing additional for infrastructure. In terms of the public, it's been in the village update twice, and we haven't actually had any feedback on it. I think there is a general understanding with the infrastructure, but how I envision a reserve being, because I have looked at several, infrastructure is basically anything that's in the asset management plan, anything in our TCA. But where your control comes is that can only be spent, and this would be put into the reserve through the budget process. So I'm anticipating this process would start earlier this year because, there was a new council last time. November, December, we'd have a more fine-tuned asset management plan. We would look at it through a strategic plan of council. They would set the priorities of what infrastructure they felt was the most important. And then we would do our budget. We would look at the current loan authorization bylaw, and we would identify if we had a really project we felt strongly that should be covered, then that's something we could use the funding for. I actually anticipate, hopefully we won't have to draw on these funds for a while, that we would allow them to accumulate before we would start spending them. But council will always have the ultimate control because we would do the budget, we would say these are the projects staff has identified as a priority. Council would discuss it probably as part of a strategic planning session. They would form part of the budget, and then you have the ultimate control because the budget is actually a bylaw with readings and adoption, which council votes on. So to me, that actually gives you the most control rather than limiting a definition. I think there is a fairly accepted term of what infrastructure is. It's anything that's in our TCA, anything in the asset management plan, because those two are the same list. But ultimately, council has the control, and every year, because I see it as a moving target, as we've been demonstrated by our sewer treatment plant, that became a higher priority than we anticipated when we initially started our asset management plan. And it would be kind of a rigorous discussion around that. And that's the first step in the budget process, identifying the key items you think you have to fund. And it's council direction, and then council votes on it. And to me, that gives you the ultimate control over it. Rather than saying it can only be spent on these 5 things, it's infrastructure. I think there is generally an acceptance of what that means. And ultimately council would have the control. So that's the type of, when I've looked at several reserve bylaws with the infrastructure levies, that's how they're written. It's basically, it can only be spent through authorization through the 5-year financial plan, which is ultimately council's direction. So that's how I would see it.
Can you, just for the edification of anyone who may not know, identify what TCA stands for?
Oh, sorry, the tangible capital assets. So that was one of, I think, the strength of our asset management plan, is explained when we had the presentation. Because we're a smaller municipality, an engineering department and the finance department are 2 people, as opposed to really large organizations where you have huge engineering departments and finance departments. Our TCA formed our asset management plan. So we only have one list of assets, and they're in our asset management plan and they're in our TCA. And that, the reason that's done is it makes it easier for us to update it every year, as opposed to they always start that way, but then they get hived off, and an engineering department would do the asset management plan and add assets to it, and then there would be the TCA. So it's the tangible capital asset listings that form part of our financial statements, but it's basically a list of every asset we have and the value, and that is also our asset management plan. So we'll be updating it as we discussed with the condition every year. And to me, that is now going to start the starting point of our budget. That's going to be one of our biggest expenses. Staff, handles the operating budget, but we would go through the priorities, look at emergent issues. Council would have a robust discussion on what they think the priorities are, and then we will discuss how to fund them. And only one of the methods of funding that would be through the infrastructure reserve. It would also be other reserves we have, possibly going out to ask for additional loans, applying for grants, and that would be sort of the funding. So to me, that's how I see the process, what I would recommend the process to be. But I think there is a general understanding of these infrastructure levies are becoming more and more common, and we didn't get any feedback at all from the two things that were in the village update, and we know people are paying attention to it because of the reaction we've had with the sewer treatment plant. So, and the increased, more and more people have signed up for it as well.
Thank you. I'm going to give this back. I'm going to ask Councillor Abbott a question in a second, but I think the piece that I had for, just give me a second on this one. I think, I can't see the email, but the thread of it was that over the six weeks I broadcast this to the community, for the first two ratings, I had absolutely no correspondence coming back and not a phone call. And on the last one, when I said this is your chance to either come to the meeting, of which, unless Mr. Cave's here directly opposed, nobody else is here. And of the emails that I got, which was perhaps 6, which were all in favor of the infrastructure, and the thread of it is it's finally time, and it's a small price to live here. So I think we have covered the community on that piece to go to the issue of putting a broad piece out here. So to give you another second, Councillor Abbott, on this one. So I think if I can editorialize, and I've asked it to be in this part of the discussion, that you're opposed to the increase of the 10% specific to the infrastructure because of a lack of definition of infrastructure, and that you believe there should be, I wrote town hall feedback, if I've got the term right, or
Public participation.
Public
participation.
Public participation. Thank you. So I think to break it down, to give you the choices here, are you satisfied with the answer on the infrastructure?
No. I think it should be, I think we spend a huge amount of money and effort on the infrastructure master plan, and I think to give it better definition, we should tie it to the infrastructure master plan. Things can be added and taken from the infrastructure master plan as well. But it was a lot of work, it's a lot of effort, it's there, it's a good document, and I think that's what we should define as infrastructure.
There's a bunch of things that are missing from the infrastructure master plan. They didn't look at everything. Now, you want to speak to that?
Well, yeah, it just looked at primarily water, sewer, roads. Parks aren't included in there. Drainage wasn't expounded upon. They just did a cursory brush of drainage. And most importantly, facilities. The CLAT building, the office complex, none of that's in there as well.
Public Works building.
Public Works building, yeah.
Which
So
is
it was narrowly focused on water and sewer. That was primary, and roads.
And it actually fed the asset management plan. Like, that was a piece we gave. So, I agree, they're intricately linked, but the asset management plan is in more depth.
Here's my concern. Someone, not I, said at that last meeting, we're not going to go spending this on something like the park, something like the beach park. That was a statement someone else made. That is a concern I have. If we're going to go start spending this money on other facilities like another renovation of a hall or whatever other office it is, before we start fixing the roads and the drainage, I think we're doing the public a disservice, and I think we're disingenuous. And that's why I'd like to see it narrowed down. That's as plainly as I can put it.
All right, well, I tell you what, thank you, that's very succinct, and we will, so that's the first one. You're pretty clear where you are with, for lack of a better description, definition of infrastructure. Fair enough, thank you, and Carol's got that recorded. To the town hall, public participation. Given what I've told you and what the CFO has told you, that we're getting materially no feedback, and our council members walk in the community, and I'm sure that if this was a hot topic, they'd be hearing it at the school or walking the dog or something like that. I don't get that. We are going to, I think we've explained every which way what the funding is for. Everybody seems to understand it, and there's been no delegations here. Public participation on something that we've already pushed forward in bylaw conflicts with me. CAO, do you, just as one, CAO?
I think that I completely understand where you're coming from, what your concern is. However, it's difficult for this council to anticipate what a council 3 terms from now might find to be the highest priority in terms of what needs to be done. It might be we have to replace the fire hall. It's falling down, there's rot, there's carpenter ants, whatever the case may be, and it's a vital component of our fire protection for the village, and if it's not, it's certainly not in the imp. So there's no funding options, let's say, other than what's been socked away in the infrastructure funding, which the whole idea of which, as presented through the asset management investment plan, was to recognize what all of our assets are, where they are in their life cycles, and what kind of a deficit we're looking at, and how much we need to start socking away, because these things are going to start needing replacement as time goes by. And that's all of our assets. It's not just pipes in the ground. So, legally, you cannot tie the hands of a future council. They need to set the priorities. Their hands are tied to the extent that it has to be through bylaw, that it has to be part of the budget process. It has to be through resolutions of council in that process. It's a public process. There's an opportunity every year for the public to take part in that process. If part of that budgetary process was 3 terms from now, we need to replace the clap building, and if people disagreed with that because they felt that Ocean View Road still hadn't been fixed and needed to be fixed, or such and such drainage, or this water main comes first, that discussion could be had at that point in time, but that council's got to make that decision. And it's trite to say that while the public is certainly welcome to provide input and participate in the process, ultimately council has to decide. If the public want to decide, they need to run for council. That's when the decisions are made. But there is that priority setting process, and it falls within the realm of council. And I just can't see that it makes sense to preordain which assets of the village deserve higher priority and treatment at this point in time. You can identify what you identified, what this council identifies as higher priority at this point in time, but you can't really do that down the road. And ultimately, this fund to be built up is for all this going to be big ticket items. So you're going to have to build up this fund in order to tackle any of these big issues. So I think that while I understand your concern, it's something it's a really big picture thing. And I think you almost need to step back and realize that in the big scheme of things, in the big picture, we're hoping to sock away this money. We're going to have to do it for a long time, build up our reserves, and councils of the future are going to have to make decisions about how that money is spent. And I just don't see how you can influence it by commentary, input, participation, whatever. But ultimately, each council's got to make those decisions.
I agree, and I think this council should then decide what we believe we want to spend it on for this council for the next 4 years.
But you don't know.
And that was one of those things we were going to define what infrastructure was, and we haven't. And I'm not sure we were on the same page.
Well, I think
So we're going to
the
move on
answer
from this
is-
subject because it's already been ruled on, right?
I think the answer is that infrastructure is anything in the asset management plan. It's all of our assets. Whenever and wherever they need to be replaced, they'll be up for discussion. Hopefully there will be all kinds of different ways to approach funding for replacement as they come due, but sometimes there isn't going to be, and probably future councils are going to turn to this fund. In terms of the short term, you've got a 5-year plan that's based, with priorities focused on what's under that loan authorization bylaw, because it provides us more options and more ability to knock off big ticket items, and that's what's in the financial plan. So, in the short term, those priorities have been set out.
And just to reassure you, the $100,000, it can only be spent if it's in the plan, and right now we're not spending that $100,000. Because I know you're also saying you don't want the $100,000 spent on something, supposedly frivolous, but hopefully that would be the discussion of council. But also I have in the 5-year plan the $100,000 coming in, but it's not going out. So, we will revisit that next fall when we do the budget, and it would be a possible source of funding. But like I said, I envision this fund being built up over several years, and I believe the public do as well. They actually want it to be built up for the big ticket items. But that's what I meant about the control of the plan. Like, this is actually a very powerful document, the 5-year plan. And I show that $100,000 coming in and is not being spent. So we do not have the authority to spend it. So in terms of, I totally respect the fact you want to protect it and not have it be spent on something frivolous. Per the law, which will be this bylaw, it can't be. Because I have it going in, but it's not coming out. It's going into the reserve. So even if we were to say, I'd like to spend it, you can't, you don't have the authority. Even council couldn't. They'd have to do a budget amendment in order to get that money out. So like I say, the 5-year plan, we spend a lot of time on the details of the 2019 plan, but sometimes we lose sight of how powerful the 5-year financial plan is in terms of a bylaw. You can't have a deficit, you can't budget a deficit, there were strict rules around it, and like I say, right now that money's going into a reserve and it's not coming out until you amend the bylaw or do a new bylaw next year. So it is just, because I totally respect what you're saying about protecting the money, and I feel that money is very protected right now.
Thank you, CFO. Councillor Abbott, just to editorialize, it was the starter was your opposition to the increase for the 10% for infrastructure for the 2 reasons of the definition of infrastructure and a town hall with public participation. I think there's been discussion on that. Has there been any change in your views on this?
We had a discussion on both those points, but I actually only made the one so far. I would still like to make the one on public participation.
Go for it.
A couple of meetings ago, I was asked to bring everyone 7 core principles of public participation. I'd like all council to read that because I think we've done that. Don't have to do it now. You can do it afterwards.
Thank you.
I do not think we've
Make a
done
note
that.
of it.
No, I asked you for this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I was hoping to come here and propose is, so let me just put, we had over 300 responses to the wood stove question. The last council, when they put out the same question, had 2 email responses. 2. And the old ex-mayor told me that. That's the difference between engaging public one way and thinking just because it's in the village, okay, it's done. What I would like to do, what I was going to suggest, prepare a communication document that goes out on April 12th. I was prepared to draft it, but I wanted it to come from everyone. And we allow a couple of weeks, and now we're getting tight to this timeline. If we get little or no response, we can still go ahead in the May 7th meeting. If we do get significant response, and I think we would, I'm hoping we would, then we'd have to maybe create a special meeting before May 15th. That's basically what I've written down here in 3 bullet points. That's what I was going to propose. And I think the way you engage public, how you go about engaging the public, is how you get responses.
Thank you for this. I think for me, and we'll let Councillors Bain and Cunliffe talk about this, and I'm going to call a motion. I think I've mentioned that given that I'm repetitive in the village update and with no response, and we are leaders of the community and responsible for the community, I'm very comfortable with where we are with this and would not be in favor of a special public participation to do something that we put forward to this point. Going alphabetically, Councillor Bain, what is the motion on the table is to receive for information purposes the 5-year financial plan. Given Councillor Abbott lots of latitude to bring up two points on this one, and after you and Councillor Cunliffe are done and giving Councillor Abbott the last word, I'm going to call a motion and we're either going to receive the report or we're not. Councillor Bain.
Well, I had a few
Question about the budget too. Yeah.
highlighted things about the budget. I can get to that afterwards.
Did you want to start with that, or? Sorry, go ahead.
What's your direction?
Usually we're talking about the budget, and then
Okay.
I guess either would be fine.
Well, seeing as Councillor Abbott's comments are nearest to us at the moment, I'll start with there. His first point, I have to say I'm very sympathetic with Councillor Abbott's position about concern for the future with the with infrastructure. But I understand with the conversation around the table that it's not under our control. We can just do our best, and I think these two ideas, what he's got here, are actually tied together in that if we want to ensure the best possible outcome for the future, we have to communicate exactly what we're doing, why we're doing it, and meet the needs of the community. If we start going frivolous or anything, we don't have the right to come up with frivolous spending, I think. I'm really strong on the position that we need to focus on the critical infrastructure, not the nice-to-haves. And if we can set the example that that's what we're going to be spending the next 4 years, spending the money on, then I would hope the next council would sort of take that as a lead and say, yeah, that's where we want to go. In fact, I would hope the general public would consider that when they vote for the next election, of get people in there who are going to meet the needs of the community and not the nice-to-haves. Because the nice-to-haves are just like sort of petals on trees that just fall away each fall. Whereas the real stuff is the good, solid stuff. It is a difficult situation to identify what the needs of the future are, but I think we can set a strong example where we're going, and I think we need to continually communicate the why and where we're going. But when it comes to the public participation, I think more of finding better ways of engaging, not having town hall meetings so much because they really haven't amounted to too much. I mean, you see the usual 30 to 40 people show up, and it's nice having the tea and biscuits, but I don't know what else is really accomplished there. We'd had a significant one when we had the issue of water shortage of 2015. I think there was a good response there. People responded well once they understood it. So I think communicating our real needs are critical. But for the projects that we're going to be coming up against or hoping to promote, I think we really need to promote, not as a sales pitch, but just explain why we've chosen this one, or 2 or 3, to be the big ticket items for us. Therefore, big ticket in as much as it's the most important. But yeah, I would like to be able to have it black and white. This is the direction the village is going to go for the next 20 years. But to the CAO's point, we can't do that. And I don't think we should be beating our head against the wall other than just set a good example.
Thank you, Councillor Bain. Councillor
I
Connell?
would have to concur with a lot that Fred just said there. We can't control future councils. We can lead by example, ideally, and have faith that the residents of the village put the proper people in at this table to make good decisions for us. I feel confident that Pam has that money locked away and that is in a position where it's just going to accrue. I think that most people understand that infrastructure and nice to haves, there is a difference, but again, that's up to future council to decide. And for the public participation, just a curiosity, when you put the mail in, like everyone got the paper copy, how many of those were received back?
How many paper copies?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you all those numbers in a bit, but 100
100 came back.
in paper form,
Yes.
maybe a few less. I can't remember exactly how many was paper now, which was electronic. About a third was paper, a little bit less, maybe a quarter out of the 256 surveys that were returned.
Because I mean, this has been in the village update. That is sort of our main communication. It hasn't had any response. And I'm not sure, it's an overwhelming response for the wood stove. I feel that, I don't know how else we can engage the public and ask them to care if they just simply don't, or they don't understand enough. But I think there's an opportunity to come to a council meeting when you know it's budget time. So I'm really, I totally agree with what you.
I have many people say and send letters and emails and comment, thanks for putting in the mailboxes, so it got my attention, that's why I read it.
Okay. Well, I would not be opposed to
And the
putting out
difference being
a paper notice.
we end up in 304 versus 2. And what happened last time I went out?
So out of curiosity, if we were to accept the report and do the readings and still put out a paper copy in everyone's mailbox in the next week, inviting them to come back for one last time before we vote on the budget, what would that look like? I mean, we could very well get nobody show up. We could get 2. I don't know, it could be overwhelming, like a packed house, and then I guess that would really give us something to pause on, so.
Well, the staff is thinking about this. My fear, and I give Councillor Abbott unbelievable kudos for what he did with the wood stove stuff, with pioneering a bunch of stuff. And I suspect his fingerprint was on a whole bunch of stuff. But my fear in papering our mailboxes is that it dissipates a strong, would really like your feedback on something. And I'm pretty solid that there is no pushback from the community on this infrastructure spending. So I presume to Councillor Cunliffe's request is that I guess if we ask staff to take I'm not sure how we're going to do this because we're probably going to go to readings in a minute. Yes, CAO.
So what I've just handed around is called the 3 Pillars for Effective Public Participation. And you might recognize top right corner, the 7 principles that Councillor Abbott handed out. That's where they come from, is from the International Association of Public Participation. But there's...
Found this first.
So this part of it, the really heavy duty, get the public in there helping to make the decisions part of it is only one aspect of the 3 pillars. there's also a code of ethics and the making the commitments to ensure that things are done in good faith and support good practice, respect for communities, access the process, etc., etc. But there's an important part here, and that is the spectrum of public participation. Not everything that a local government does falls at the high end of the scale. There's a really good one that I'll hand out as well. It's actually taken from the Auditor General's Public Participation Best Principles and Practices for BC, and it's the Capital Regional District, and they've sort of tailored it to their own needs and added a section on the bottom which includes what's the participant's responsibility in the process. So you've got inform and educate, which is, these are all the same things as what's in the IAPP. But you've got inform and educate. So that's where, sometimes local government is just telling people, here, this is what we're doing. Just letting them know, communicating, here's what's going on in your municipality. You're giving them information, helping them understand, informing, educating. Gathering information, you're looking to obtain feedback on analysis, alternatives, and potential decisions. You're listening and acknowledging the public's concerns, taking an active role in keeping yourself. So the public's obligation here is to take an active role in keeping oneself informed and up to date. So sometimes they don't do that. They choose not to do that. Sort of the middle of the road is discuss. Work with public to ensure concerns and aspirations are understood and considered. The CRD's commitment in this case is to work with the public to exchange information, ideas, and concerns. And the participants' responsibility is to be open to other points of view and work with staff and members of the public if they're given the opportunity to do so. Then you get into engage and partnering, and that's more or less you're getting into now where you're facilitating discussions and agreements between public parties to identify common ground and actions and solutions, and you're seeking the advice and innovations from amongst various public parties. So you're really going out there and looking for answers from the public, and then finally you're partnering with them on certain things. In local government, it's very rare that you're at that end of the spectrum. That end of the spectrum is elections and referendums, essentially. Generally speaking, you're informing, you're gathering information, and sometimes you're discussing. When it comes to budget processes, you are informing and educating, but you're also looking for feedback because you're trying to make decisions about priorities. Councils have an idea as to what they think are the priorities that ought to be set out, but they put that out there for the public to come back to them on. And I would suggest that this process has been going on for a couple of months. There's been budget documents after budget documents, every single agenda. It's noted in the village update every time as to what's coming up in the council meeting if it's budget discussion stuff. Nobody's really come out to talk about it. Nobody's really provided any feedback on it, and that's up to them. It's the participants' responsibility, and they've chosen not to do so. Whether or not we've reached everybody,
We have not. And that's the
maybe we
point I
haven't.
contend.
Maybe we haven't.
That's the point I contend.
But we can't very
But we know
well.
we can.
can't very well
We know
put.
how to reach everyone.
Can't
We've
very well
proven that.
put a budget document in everybody's mailbox every
No, it's
every week, kind of thing.
And then,
So-
and there's a couple of points. One, before anyone thinks I think the public don't want us to do this, I completely do.
Mm.
I completely believe they do want us to do this. I completely believe they want us to spend money on infrastructure. And I don't think there's going to be pushback on it if that's what people suggest. My concern is in that middle of the road of your spectrum you spoke about, and if you read the 7 principles, is the public have the right to know that they will be communicated to with all facts,
Mhm.
and that's hidden in a. We struggle to read this budget, for goodness sake. And I ask like 10 questions every week, and I'm struggling to understand it. How do they understand it? No. We spoke about trying to get something simple and put it out to people. They have the right to know that. They have the right to respond, and they have the right to understand. They need to know that their response affects the outcome. That's,
It may not, though.
All right.
You can't promise that their response is going to affect the
no,
outcome.
the response was taken into account in the outcome.
All right,
Taking into
gentlemen,
account, that's,
gentlemen,
yeah,
gentlemen.
for sure.
I
Yeah.
think we've gone along on this topic. I'm going to call a motion on this one, and the issue is to, I guess, so we've given Councillor Abbott some latitude on two pieces, the definition of infrastructure and his request for a public, town hall for public participation.
Sorry, I wasn't suggesting a tunnel. I was suggesting putting out a flyer in mailboxes on April the 12th, as we did with the wood stoves, to give people time to give us feedback. I'm not suggesting it's going to be a referendum or a survey. I'm not even sure needs to be questions on it. Just something that engages the people that don't necessarily open the village update or even get it.
In terms of timing, you referred to May 7th. May 7th is the date by which we have to adopt the bylaw. So it can't be given 3 readings and adoption on May 7th. It would have to, it needs to move along before that. So it would need to have 3 readings by April 16th. That doesn't give people very much time to respond from Friday to Tuesday. Unless council wants to have a
Special meeting.
special meeting in between.
Okay, I think we'll do this in a different way. Again, lots of latitude on lots of discussion, a whole bunch of it academic, and I think, so for the councillors to do this, I will do we'll do a show of nods, if you will, to use former Mayor Burr saying. So the first piece is, and I'll phrase it in a way that you can go yes to or no to by nodding. I believe the definition of infrastructure is satisfactory for me.
I would like to see it tighter.
Okay, I think that the by majority, the definition of infrastructure is satisfactory. I believe we've communicated with the community extensively and with no feedback, and I'm fine with where we are with that. So I would not be proposing to do anything more other than go to the readings and do the, what's the term, Pam, where we do the, have the public in for the 5-year,
Sorry?
where we do the, we invite the public in to explain the 5-year plan to them. What's that called?
The public meeting?
Think,
Or-
where we do it in the hall before?
Yeah, we had, yeah, we just
Could have
had,
been way back in the process.
yeah.
Okay.
No, we're not.
We're not doing that? Okay, fine.
At this point.
Yeah.
No, okay, so
That-
then I'm fine with where we stand in terms of advising the public. So I'm not going to suggest we do anything more.
I'm just wondering whether, like, I'm not sure, you're talking about like a one-page.
One page.
Like, what would you see as, like, in order to convey sufficient information for people to understand, to the extent that they might be motivated to respond, what would you anticipate being on that one page?
Get a little bit to what Councillor Palmer actually brought up first. I was thinking the same way. Understanding the 5-year plan and just our financial health. What do we have in reserves? We could list what we it's more than this 10%, but we could list what we spend as normal operating costs, and they've gone up 3%. We don't know. That's not the core part of the information, but maybe it's there to round it off. But it's what do we have in reserves? What are we taking this money for? And how we like to spend it and why we need it.
So I think CFO Rook was planning to bring a report on reserves in when?
We usually do it. The reserves are dictated by your financial statements, so I would do that after the financial statements, which would be the second meeting in May. The financial statements, the auditors are in a week and a half. I mean, it's a fait accompli. It's what's in the reserves, but I don't think it's so much what's in your reserves, it's how you're planning to spend it, which is the important thing. If I could just say, I think the reason the wood stove was successful, you asked a specific question,
All right.
as opposed to just, I mean, if you were to send anything out, I would send out the
Well, you
mayor's.
send out my last article.
Yeah, I would send out the last
I
article.
mean, it breaks
If you
it down
want-
into here's what it is, here's what it costs you, and it's already done, and I work like a dog to skinny it down to the most relevant. I think for, I mean, we've got counselors that sit at this table who are glazing over looking at 8 pages of financial columns.
Yeah.
Nobody,
Encourage you to ask questions, and no one does.
and so there we go. So to send that out, to send that out to the public is a no-go.
Questions we do, and I think I've got some more questions.
But all I was going to say, there was a specific question. How do you feel about the
I
wood
understand,
stoves?
I understand.
No. What I'm saying is, I would be reluctant to do that with the budget, because my question to you would be, and this is your role as counselors, what if everyone comes back, I want a 0% tax increase? Well, I mean, if that's the case, then, to me, council's not doing their duty. If you've had an asset management plan that tells you need more money than that, and if your idea is just to make sure everyone has seen the budget and understands it's 10%, but you said yourself you think people are okay with that, what I would send out would be the last village update,
Well,
just to make sure people. Sorry, go
I
ahead.
would point out as well, the village update with that article on it is sitting in the folder, in the postal box where everybody goes and gets their mail. It's right there. For those who don't look online on the computer.
Okay, we're still in the call to motion piece here. So Councillor Bain, I'm proposing that we not do anything more. And your verbal nod is what?
Well, with my head still, my verbal nod comes out of my mouth. I'm thinking that for this year, it seems like we're in a time crunch to get all the communication done before the deadlines of reporting and everything. And could we make a margin note or something that next year, rather than being in a time crunch, we really rethink the way we do this? Not that we have to change anything, but just see if we come up with any ideas in a year that would help us so that we can make this a smooth transition into whatever we may think we need. But I don't think we're trying to get away with anything, and I take Councillor Abbott's concern about the communication seriously, but I just don't see how we can do it in this short time frame. So can we, I would advocate accepting the recommendation at this time, but realizing next year we'll be doing another 5-year plan that will supersede this one, and maybe with an earlier start, seeing as we're not coming out of an election period, we can get our ducks in a row.
Fair enough, and I think just on that, since it's probably going to be me that's writing on this, and I kind of get the paperwork that's here too, I think I might be more interactive. Councillor Cunliffe, you got the last word.
I really do agree with Fred. I think it is kind of a crunch. I think that pointing out that the village update is available in the post office to be picked up, it's there. If somebody really wants, and if somebody was really concerned about the budget, they can walk into the village office at any time and ask. So I agree that we could do it differently, but I don't see that there is time to truly do that differently right now,
Okay.
as we do have a deadline that is coming up rapidly.
Councillor Abbott, you're on the short list here.
Hail Mary. Here's my Hail Mary.
Go for it. I'm going deep.
I heard mention of your last update, all the effort you put into it, pare it down to one page, print it, put it in the mailboxes, and ask people to come back. Comments, we'll use the same words, have my say, use the feedback. What's it going to take? 600 prints, and what did we pay last time? $100 for the stuffing.
Do you know?
Well,
That was the quote I got anyway.
I'm not sure.
I don't think we've been billed.
$100.
It's
For
somewhere
the
around.
preparation, it was.
For $100,
Folding.
Oh, yeah.
doesn't slow it down.
Can we do okay, the ball's still in the air. Either through our technical wizardry, if we could get this on the, let's say we went with this, and we did the mailbox stuff, and it was, I think we can probably do one folded page, I'm sure. Are we able to do imprint something like you normally do when you see draft, where it's last chance feedback, something like that?
Does it have to be folded? Can't you just?
Well, I don't know how you
It has to
stuff
be
it in.
folded, yeah,
I-
3 times.
Let's
4
not
times
get
of that,
too.
that-
You don't have to,
7
by the way,
hours.
but it works better if you-
Hey, the ball's still in the air.
Are you
The
at
guy's
a folding party?
the guy's begging for a crumb here. Come on. So I'm just trying to find a way that if people choose to do nothing, that's
So just
fine.
what outcome do you want? I mean, is it just because you want to make sure everyone saw it?
Yes.
Or
Yeah,
do you
I
really
can see
want
that.
them to have feedback? Because if there is feedback and you're thinking of changing the budget, then we were under a dire
You know,
deadline.
no one's going to come back and suggest that 10 is 9.5 or...
Well, we don't know what we don't.
You don't know.
But you don't know.
They might, but I'm not...
But my concern is, like, that's what I don't understand, like, that, to me, it's a completely separate ball of wax with the wood burning. That was a specific question, we wanted a survey, there was a survey. Just sending something out to make sure everyone saw it, I don't know, like,
People
to
thought
me,
it was
It's
gonna lose
communication, that's what
something.
we're supposed to do.
pardon?
And people
Well, I'd
thought
hate
they'll
to see
lose something.
400 these things in that bin.
So to me, there'd have to be something written as to why you're sending it out. Because I think most people have seen it,
All
I
right.
really do.
Well, and I also must say that there was nothing paper sent out to anybody regarding the wastewater treatment plant. It was just to the
Yeah,
village
it got
update.
their attention.
And there was a
All right.
lot
Yeah,
of
no,
attention.
trust me, if they were
All right.
upset about it, we would have heard.
Time ran out. Motion's called. Councillor Abbott, thank you for making the questions and coming up with logical stuff. I appreciate your challenging any decisions that are here. I think, though, that the motion is called on this one. I think this is maybe a bit of a learning exercise for next year if we're going to do something slightly different in terms of, and I'm not sure what it would look like, but it would be beyond the village update. So I think I've called the motion on this, so the issue here is receiving the report for information purposes. All in favor? Yes, thank you. Move on. We are on to CAO number 2.
Well, Councillor Bain had some questions, answered to the report, as did I. So we
Yeah,
can get to that.
we went out of order. I think there were questions still about the budget.
I don't think, there's nothing I've got very material here. There's some things I wanted to ask Pam. I can talk to her tomorrow on the phone.
Thank you.
Or did you want it in matter of the public record? Sorry. I mean,
Should,
yeah. I mean, in terms of participation, it would be nice if it was
yeah,
part of the public
that's
record.
right. I would like to know what the secret answer is too.
Well, okay, on page 19, I was curious about the amortization and what impact will the infrastructure levy have on the reporting of amortization?
It really has no impact. That's dictated by tangible capital assets. We have our assets, we estimate their life, and then we calculate the depreciation. And for budget purposes, we still are adding it back. So it is an expense. It's an expense in the financial statements, but then we add it back. But then that opens up the whole discussion that we have the infrastructure levy, but a lot of people feel the levy should equate to what the depreciation is, because that's how your assets are depreciating, how you're using them up, and you should make sure you're putting aside the equivalent amount of money, which we're not doing. Most municipalities wouldn't be able to do that. But in terms of the asset management plan, it would have no impact on the calculation. That's purely a financial calculation. It's the value of the assets divided by how long we think it's going to last, and it represents the amount that is expensed each year. If we've used 1/10 of an asset, then 10% of the value of the asset gets expensed. But it's included in here as an expense, and then we add it back.
Right.
Because it's a non-cash item. But that is the whole philosophy around asset management. We're recognizing that we're using up these assets, so some schools of thought say we should be putting aside that amount of depreciation, $736,000 a year, into a reserve, and we're clearly not. But it's a goal that some people are trying to reach.
Well, that's what I was kind of wondering, with the add back on the amortization at 736 for this budget, would we not cut that back, the amount that we're putting aside in reserve?
No, because we're not taxing for it. It's up here as an expense. It's included in here. So I'm actually adding it back.
Oh, I
Like,
get
if I
you.
kept it
I
in
get you.
here, I'd have to increase taxation enough to cover $736,000. Yeah,
Gotcha.
okay.
Should we just go through it? I've got one on page 19 as well.
Keep going.
On page 19, the land sales.
Yes.
The number seems odd to me. Is that something that needs to be discussed later and closed? Or can you explain
Yes.
assumptions there?
Yes, I could. It's basically land, it's up in top, the land revenue that I'm anticipating, and then the transfer of that to reserves. So this year, it's a 1-for-1. We're anticipating in 2019 an estimate. It's basically the cost of land less any expenses. There's certain expenses we're allowed, like getting the land ready to be sold. There are expenses we're allowed to deduct. So that
So the difference between 2018 and 2019 is what we spent?
No, 2018 was just our anticipated. We didn't sell it last year. In 2018, that's what we were hoping to get for the different pieces of land. So that was just a comparison, but it's the same, basically the same thing. So we're anticipating this year getting $2.3 million from land sales, and 100% of that is going into a reserve for land sales. So it's the revenue comes in and then it gets transferred out into a
The
reserve.
difference between last year and this year is how much the land is devalued.
And some assumptions on costs as well, getting the costs, because there were quite a few costs for the Kelvin Grove.
All done?
I'm done.
I have
Oh,
one last one. So on page 33, the 75K in the middle, that's the study.
I'm sorry, what page? I
Sorry,
apologize.
page
33.
33, thank you, sorry.
Sewer budget. The 75K is the study that we are about to do. Is that right?
Yes,
So the study would be funded from previous year's unrestricted surplus. Is that
Yes.
reserves? now?
yes, like basically we know we have just over $200,000 in the unrestricted surplus, and this is a year, and this has happened in prior years as well, where we're not going to tax that much to cover all that. And remember too, the 75, I mean, that's just the estimate that was from the
Yeah.
IMP, but hopefully we will be less than that.
And then on line 8, we've got 80K for the upgrade of the media discs.
Yes, so that's the damaged discs,
That's the
yes.
damaged disc that we haven't repaired yet and we're still waiting for the budget for.
That's the damaged disc that we have not replaced yet,
Yeah.
and we're waiting for the report
Yeah.
to determine whether or not we do a complete upgrade, or, am I
No.
saying that right?
No, I thought,
Well, to determine what our options are and whether we can upgrade the current plant within our existing permit, or
aren't we
whether,
repairing the broken discs regardless?
Right now, the pressure is off because the broken discs are functioning and keeping us within our permit.
Okay, sorry, that's an update I didn't get. Okay.
no, we can
So-
replace the busted discs, right?
That's what this budget
That's
is
what
for.
this is for.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. But the question is, do we replace the busted
Mm,
axle,
right.
or do we put that money towards a more significant upgrade of the existing plant?
Right.
Well, the budget is a point in time, which was then, and I think it's still a fluid situation.
But that is a good point in terms of just the budget process. I take my best estimates that I have at this time, the 80, and if I didn't put the 80 in the budget, we couldn't spend the money without a budget amendment. Again, that protection I talked about.
Yeah.
If it turns out we do decide to do a more expensive, then we would have to think of a way to fund that, and we would have to do a budget amendment. But that is the thing with the budget, it's a point in time now, that's the challenge of the budget, I'm estimating, sort of with the 75, I put that full amount in, we're hoping not to spend that, but I can't spend unless it's in the budget, so that's sort of why we went with the 80, that we're not necessarily locked into that, but I had to have the 80 in there, or else the Public Works Manager couldn't spend the money.
Okay. Last question. I could wrap my brain around and trace virtually all the numbers that kind of jumped out at me, but I couldn't on page 37, general fund, capital expenditure. Where do we get 655 from? How do I understand what that number represents?
Oh, that's, okay, if you go to the page before, 36, one sec. So you can see the total capital expenditure, $3,170,594, and that ties into that total number. And this is just kind of a breakdown of, yeah, sorry, to be clear, I should have shown It's everything except the 2,362,000 at the top, or it should be. There's the water fund, and then there's the, no, not quite. There's the water fund and the general fund. So, actually that was my mistake. Oh, here we are. The labels got cut off. So this, on page 36, if you look down, we've got the first 3170594, and then we've got the second one, and there's the 655168.
Yes.
And I apologize that beside that, and it got cut off when I printed it, that's the general fund. The 95,000 is the sewer.
Yeah.
And then the other two is water. I split it between the water tank and then other miscellaneous water. So thanks for catching that. That was my mistake. I cut off the labels. So that's where the numbers come from.
Okay, all right.
And the 655 has increased a little bit since the last meeting. I completely forgot to include the public works trucks in the budget because we've already bought them. They were approved by special resolution last year. And then when I was thinking so much future spending, I forgot to actually account for what we've actually already spent. So that's the 5 public work trucks, which we financed through a loan. So I've added that to this budget. So that's a change since what you saw in the last meeting.
Okay,
All good, Councillor Abbott?
yeah.
Good, thank
Anyone
you.
catch my Hail Mary?
Sorry, I think the whistle blew on that one. All right, thank you very much. So we moved on to, so we're on to 8A2. Everybody loves a good lease.
On life?
Always.
So after much to and fro with CN, we're down to the short strokes. We have an agreement that you have before you, which essentially catches all the terms. The only thing that we're still just wrangling a little bit about is the wording of the insurance clause at 4.13 regarding our liability insurance from the MIABC. And just we're working on explaining how some of the nuances in how MIABC operates as opposed to a private insurance company that does things a little bit differently. So I should have that ironed out shortly. I was hoping I'd have that answer for you today, but essentially the agreement is as you see before you and is approvable as such in substantively the form you have before you. What we have in terms of the basics is a 5-year lease, which started last year, so the first year of which we paid $1,200 a year. And starting May 1st of this year, we're into the second year of that 5-year lease, and the rate goes up to $2,500 per year. It's still an extremely good rate compared to what I understand that they normally charge, and we worked hard to get this rate. In terms of, the biggest issue, as I say in the report, was the environmental liability insurance. They wanted $10 million on that, and that was going to cost us over $6,000 a year just for that increase. So what we did instead was we got a baseline assessment done, environmental assessment done of the parking lot, which showed that there was no contamination concerns, no hazardous substances. And with that in hand, we were able to get them to agree to the $2 million that we already carry. So that was what took the longest time, was getting through that process and getting them to agree to that. We do have a right of renewal, and CN has a right upon 1 year's notice before the end of the lease. They would have to tell us if they are retracting that right of renewal. That's their only option to cancel, other than for cause, if we stop paying rent or something. So essentially, hopefully this is what we've got for the next 10 years. Once we have this locked down, in the meantime, Public Works Manager Jaffer is working with CN personnel on permitting that's necessary for us to proceed with improving the parking lot, installing the drainage, the fencing, and the paving, and then the line painting after that. So things are coming together.
Good.
And you have this here before you for approval in terms of recommendation that's on
Good.
page 1 of the report.
Thank you very much. So just to read out the recommendation, I'll put it forward that the lease between the Canadian National Railway Company and the Village of Lions Bay dated May 1, 2018, in brackets the 2019-23 CN lease, be approved in substantially the form attached, and 2, that the mayor and CAO be authorized to execute the 2019-2013 CN lease, subject to
2019,
20
2013?
19 to
Oh.
2023.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
that,
Welcome.
See, you know, you don't put things in columns, Council Conley, you just pick it up like glint. CN lease, thank you. Carol, you got that? Thank you. Subject to any minor amendments regarding insurance terms to be agreed as between the CN and the municipality. Can I have a seconder? Thank you. Discussion. If I can start, thank you very, very much for, I think, for those who do not know, this is 2 years of work.
Pretty much.
Pretty much. And we'll just glimmer past all the dying in the trenches here to the works manager and to the CFO. When do you expect the work will begin for the improvements after we've signed?
We have a telephone conference call with the CN Public Works officer on Thursday. We're hoping to get approval on Thursday to proceed.
To proceed? And this is the Hail Mary I'm looking for. Estimated completion of?
Before the long weekend in May is our target.
For everything?
To get the paving done?
Yeah?
Wow.
Okay, well, that wasn't a long one. That was only a 10-yarder. Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions?
Just one question. So, and we cover some of this obviously through our parking, right? Parking charges that we do. Years ago, the marina used to charge public that tried to park there. Do they still do that, and do they have a right to do that?
No.
They
No,
don't?
No, we don't do that. We had an arrangement with them previously,
Okay.
how that worked. They sold tickets that, I think we shared the revenue 50/50.
Yeah, we've got about $4,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, we terminated that last year or the year before, when we
The
put
year
the meters
before.
in. Yeah,
2 years
Yeah.
ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that hasn't been the case for a couple of years.
All right. Okay.
And so other than seasonal, that's the non-resident parking lot. Okay. Oh, got traction here. No more questions? Call a motion for approval. Thank you. Unanimous. Thank you. That was a drum roll. Thank you. Okay, number 8A3, which is the resident survey results. Is staff doing this, or is Councillor Abbott?
I've got a summary here.
Or are you fighting for the podium?
I'm not fighting for it.
Okay. Councillor Abbott, once you're sitting, you've got the chair here. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, should have passed it.
Oh, beautiful.
Has everyone got one?
Let's
No,
go
we got
down.
them all.
I've got two. So I've got two. Can I give one to the public here?
Okay.
Here we go.
You've got one?
Okay. So, apologies, this is kind of last minute, but I worked on it until this afternoon. I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as I can, but you know there was a lot of data, so you'll be human if I seem to go on a little bit, but I'll try to go as fast as I can. So we had a significant number of responses, and with a few late ones, it was over 300. This was not meant to be a scientific referendum or poll of any sort. We were just trying to get as much input as we could. However, the way we worded the question might have led some people to leave. There was one per household. We got an equal number of one per household versus 6 people in the household. well, very few people did that. We've got a lot of people that would answer one per household, and just as many would send two. One for each. But that won't, as we'll get to in a minute, that won't sort of skew that final outcome in any way at all. The online survey demonstrated this more clearly. Is I asked Sean the last minute thing on Monday to send me a survey, a spreadsheet that had the IP addresses on, which I think she can do fairly easily. We noticed a good number of IP addresses were common. As many as people had had common IP addresses had answered their own question. There was one place where there was 4 IP addresses that were common, and someone had put in the name, owner of, and an address. An owner of an address, and all 4 addresses were different. So clearly someone was helping their neighbours who didn't have access to a computer, or maybe was older, to say, get the survey info. There was another one where there was lots of members of a family, and we could obviously then decide whether it was one vote or more. But it's when and that was in the email you guys saw this afternoon, when I got challenged on that and I sliced and diced it 4 different ways, the difference was 1% swing from the highest to the lowest. So it made no difference whether I ignored those or included them or filtered them out. It made absolutely no difference. So the survey, what I'm saying, the survey percentages are what they are. It was not a scientific poll, but if it had been, I don't think it would have made one jot of difference. Okay, so just quickly, there was 256 surveys, paper and electronic, with an 89% request that we go for a special exemption. I added back in the unique email and feedback responses that I could recognise, because many people sent an email and said, I've completed the survey. Some didn't say that, but I could see the name. So it was fairly easy to say, okay, these guys' email was actually meant to be their survey. So I added back those ones, and it came out to 86% under expenditure exemption, 10% do nothing, and 4% other. That was always on the primary question, obviously. The second question was trying to ascertain how many households in the village actually had wood burning as a sole source of heat. We got 25 responses, or 10% of those that answered that question said yes, wood burning was their sole source of heat.
Hard to believe.
It's hard to believe there's any, but there is 10%.
Source of heat. Think about taking a cold shower next time, Councillor Cunliffe.
There may be
Now-
baseboard heaters that are incredibly ineffective and haven't been turned
And
on
don't
in
get
4
used.
years.
Yeah, and
Have not been
one
used.
person has told me that that's actually what they do sitting at this table. Don't use their basement heaters at all. So it's it's a smallish number, but it's I was surprised by it. A little of an anomaly. The people that said yes, it was their sole source of heat, answered in 100% of the time they wanted us to be excluded from the survey. Maybe it's not an anomaly because that's their belief, but they would have been exempt anyway, because if it's your sole source of heat, you do not have to comply. Whether they realise that or not, I'm not sure. But they may not need to. Everything's in May. This bylaw has not been written, but that was what was in Metro put out. Of the others that answered no, it was not their sole source of heat. The numbers are pretty much the same: 87, 9, and 4%. So then the third question was wood burning your secondary source of heat? Okay. The answer was yes, was 76% of the people that answered. And the answer no to that one was 22%. And people that said they don't answer, there was a third way to answer that question was we don't have any wood burning appliances, which actually 2% of the respondents answered. I thought those numbers, I thought there would be more people that didn't have any wood burning appliances. But I just did a little survey of my own street, and every single house in my street has a chimney of some sort that looks like it could or would burn wood. Every single house. So I have no reason to believe that virtually every house in the village has, whether they use it or not, at least has an old fireplace in the house. I think that's, I was surprised, but then when I thought about it, it's probably accurate. And also, the people that don't have any wood burning appliances were the only people that came close to 50-50. There was only 4 of them. Half of them said we should comply, and half of them said we shouldn't. So that shows you the people that had absolutely nothing to lose, still didn't necessarily just vote for their own self-interest. That made me wonder how many other people I could identify that really did not have anything to lose, and how would they vote. So I took people that don't have any, right? And I added the people that answered no to both the second and third question, right? So that's people that said no, it's not their sole source of heat, and no, it's not their secondary source of heat. So these people clearly have nothing to lose, and even those people voted 75% in favour of complying with the, 75% in favour of us not being included in this bylaw, i.e. being considered outside the urban containment boundary. And then just for those that like to look at a few more statistics, we have 234 people answered the 4th question, which was to try to determine people that had advanced technology wood stoves. 37% had an unrated stove, 7% had an unrated or open fireplace, 7% had an older model stove, 27% had advanced technology stove, so they knew that they could certify that their stove was going to emit less than 4.5 grams per hour. And then there was an equal number, or very close to equal number, who did not know whether their wood stove was rated or not. Interesting, regardless of where they were in that situation, whether they thought it wouldn't affect them or concerned it would affect them, didn't make any difference in how they voted. They all voted 88% in favour of being excluded, or just maybe I should get this correct, 88% in favour of us being included with the others that were outside of the containment boundary. So clearly people didn't vote in self-interest. They voted in what they thought was right for the neighbours, potentially right for the planet, whatever else. I just also crunched the numbers a few other ways. If we only looked at the anonymous ones, were the anonymous ones likely to be people that are trying to salt the results by claiming anonymous? No, the number was still 87%. I looked at the ones that had put their name in, the answer was 86%. I looked at the ones that only answered comments, the answer was 86%. And then I took the IP addresses out. If the same IP address and they were blank, I took them out on the possibility that it was someone that clicked twice on the button or tried to do it twice. And again, it made no difference at all. Ended up at 88%. So there's no doubt in my mind people voted honestly. There was no campaign, and there was many opportunities to provide feedback. They used all of them, and regardless of what subset of how they provided the feedback, the number came out the same. And I think we're all probably surprised at how high the number is in favour of us being included for those that are outside of the urban containment boundary. And does anyone want to comment or ask any questions on the kind of numbers or anything that came out of there? Anything else? I did glean other numbers. If there's any other question or any statistic that doesn't answer, to want to ask me on or challenge me on? Jim? No?
I think it's a great survey, but I'll defer to council.
Good. Well, I'll lead that. Firstly, I'm reading directly from a resident who wrote us at 4:30, and this was in response to Councillor Abbott's parlaying this information to them. And to quote, it says, "Wow, you certainly worked hard to consider all the possibilities. Thank you for your very thorough job." I think that's an understatement. It's a tremendous piece of investigation. It's a good piece for our community to see what we're doing, and I think Councillor Abbott paved some stuff here. So I see the CAO's hand is slowly making it shoulder height. Before I move to accept the two reports and make
I have a little bit more to.
Okay, keep going.
I should keep going. I just want to see if anyone had any questions on the stats.
Okay.
Peter.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask you, going through all these questions and looking at them different ways and stuff, did you have any thoughts about, oh, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question that way, or maybe there was another question I should have asked as well, or am I missing something, anything like that? Any sort of aha moments that, oh, wish I'd thought of that before?
There was a little bit of that, but I had gone through it and given it to other people before to look at it and see what they thought. So I think it was pretty thorough, and I think we got the answers we wanted. I started with a lot more questions, of course, and then pared it down. I think that was a good thing. I think if we'd gone to the sort of detail we've seen before about trying to, that other survey that was going around, those kind of detail, I think people might have got lost.
Right.
So I think it was the right level at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
I think there were some responses that made me wonder whether people understood, because they would respond one way and vote a different way. And initially I thought, did they actually understand that this didn't affect them? But then when I started going through in umpteen different ways, I realised people weren't voting how it affected them personally. And that became very apparent.
What about some of the vehemence with which answers? Some people were quite vehement in their answers with respect to Metro and.
I'll go with a few of those.
Okay, is that coming up?
There's a little bit more of that.
Okay.
We'll probably get those questions in a minute. Okay, so what I did was I ran at the top baker's dozen of responses on how many times. So as I read every single response, regardless of where it came from, and I kept a track of what I thought. And sometimes the gist or the main fact point the guy was making, and sometimes they made multiple facts. I said, oh, they were talking about this, this, and this. And I kind of tabulated them a little bit in my spreadsheet. So I had some tracking of what most people spoke about. The single most common reason for the decision was for financial reasons. Many people shared the cost of their heating bills with me, and how much extra it would cost to heat exclusively with hydro. The other significant cost concern was the cost of a replacement, which I can attest to this, I've done it, which is orders of magnitude more than the grant, and it's a significant amount of money. Only one person tried to argue that we lived in $1 million houses and cost should not be a factor for us. So there was 36 people that I identified this as the main core reason for why they voted, the cost, and one that said it shouldn't matter. The second most used reason was the situation during hydro outages. Now this one is a bit of an anomaly. The bylaw once written may well allow for use during outages regardless of location. We don't know that yet, obviously it's not been written. And it might just be because at that time it is your sole source of wood heat. Or it could actually even be worded that way in what I'm told. But it should also be noted that many of these responses included other reasons for their decision. So it wasn't as if I should ignore these 31 inputs, because they might have said, oh, outages, and by the way, cost, and by the way, something else. But even if I did exclude them, 31 in the 300, it's not going to make it both. Many people seemed willing to allow for infrequent use due to ambience, aesthetics, open fireplace, or an open fireplace added value to their home. I was a little surprised at how many people admitted that. Some described it as a guilty pleasure. They did once or twice a year, or occasionally wanted to curl up with a book, or that kind of thing. So I was surprised how highly that ranked, but there's clearly people that get benefits other than just keeping their heating bills down. Okay, the next and closely followed on that one was the number of residents. That implied things might be different if they had natural gas, or that this was the differentiator between us and Metro. I don't see any action out of that. Councillor Bang and I were in conversation with Terracing once about whether they could do a thing here. It's relatively expensive. I don't think there's any action we need to take on that. I think it has been explored before. Okay, the next one, and that's my first action. Well, the first action, of course, is about the primary question. But the next one's about the urban containment boundary. So, I'm now number 5 in the ranking of people's reasons, but the 5th most common reason was that people believed either we should not be part of Metro at all. I think there still is some people that maybe don't understand Metro as the GVRD. I'm not sure about that. But most of them focused on the urban containment boundary and wanted to know why we were part of the urban containment boundary and aligned us with Bowen and Moore and others that were outside of it. The next most frequently used justification was air quality. Twice as many people, 16, argued we did not have an air quality issue as those who believed it was a concern, which was only 7. Another common suggestion was the idea of grandfathering or grandfathering or changing our compliance over time. And I've got another suggested action out of that one. The next most common reason, so the next thing people mentioned most was practices for seasoning wood, for burning your fires properly, those kind of things, and I've got action out of that. The next most common reason were people who took issue with the data and the reports and how they were formed. I was surprised that there were that. These tended to be, in some cases, very long and detailed emails of people that believed both ways that the reports we are using, be it the air monitoring unit report or Hydro's, or Metro's data that they based their reports on was flawed. There was considerable number of people thought they were flawed, and if anyone wants to read those arguments, they can go read them. They seem to be very detailed. The next thing that came out commonly was the unfairness of second-tier hydro, given that we had no alternate utility, as in gas. There were some suggestions we approach BC Hydro. I'll talk about that on an action in a minute. The next one that came up frequently was to point out the bigger polluters. People believed the highway was a bigger polluter, the railway was a bigger polluter, pulp mills and the like. The last one that rounded out my dozen top points was the number of people that wanted to point out the enforcement of this bylaw was going to be difficult or impossible, and neither Metro or London were likely to do so. I'll pause for a minute if anyone wants to ask anything on any of those before I go on to the actions. If there's anything else you were expected to see there that you didn't see. Okay, so the actions that I would like to propose. So the first action is the only one that needs to happen with any urgency. And I'm suggesting the follow-up actions maybe could just go in the action log in front of the minutes, and follow up over time with probably my name, or in some cases my name, staff's name, instead of staff's. But the first one that we need to act on, I believe we need to, and this is the one I think we need to agree on tonight, or vote on tonight if I put a resolution forward, is that we write to Metro requesting exemption be granted along with others who are outside the urban containment boundary. I would like to include a summary copy of the survey, sorry, a copy of the survey and a copy of the summary results in that. Peter, I'm not sure whether it's something your staff should word or if I should assist you. So I'm really not sure whose role that is. I'm guessing it's a staff role.
Mhm.
But I can certainly review the copy if you like. The section action came around the urban containment boundary. As I said, there's a significant number of people that wanted to know why we were inside the urban containment boundary, stating that these were, the concern was that if we were outside the urban containment boundary defined, we could avoid this circumstance because we would automatically have been excluded with the others, and that we are more aligned with Angmore, Bowen, Balcarra, District of North Van, those kind of areas than we are with City of North Van, West Van, and larger populated municipalities. I think I would like to take this on as in contacting a metro, unless someone thinks there's someone else that should do it, and just ask this question and see if we can get some better information.
Which point was this, Councillor Rammer?
The question of why we are inside the urban containment boundary instead of outside the urban containment boundary, like other areas that optically look exactly like us.
I thought that you had mentioned something about the rationale for that previously, earlier in January when you were embarking on this, perhaps after you'd had a conversation with somebody at Metro. I remember you being in this room and mentioning some...
No, I didn't get to anyone that explained how and why the urban containment boundary was drawn. No, at Metro, no. In my conversation with Roger at Metro, he explained that they had used the urban containment boundary to define who should not comply with this because that was the only tool they had. The fact that we seem to be out of step with the other areas that look like us in that definition, he didn't have an explanation for. I could contact him again and explore that further, and he could probably direct me to the right person, and that's what I would like to put down as an action for myself.
That's probably something staff should do. But
Okay.
I'd be happy to receive the contact information that you've got to explore further with
Okay.
those people, and maybe something that I should be having a conversation with the Metro CAO about. She may have information on that. Anyways, we talk further about that.
Okay, we'll talk further about that. And a follow-up to that question, several residents questioned why, went to one step further and wanted to know why we are part of Metro Vancouver, and with suggestion that maybe we are better aligned to Squamish Regional District. I think it's a question we need to answer. I don't think it's a question that's a short or an easy answer to. And I think that's something we need to look at producing some sort of report when we're not got other pressing needs.
I think it's a question that's been asked previously and perhaps even explored previously.
If you have the answer already, then...
I don't know that we have any kind of a report about it, but I do think it's been explored before. Changing regional districts would not be a simple matter.
I am sure it's not.
It would be a lot of time and
I
energy,
have no doubt.
resources expended.
I've no doubt. I just
pursuing
feel
that.
we need to answer, give some sort of answer to that.
Right.
So I just want to put on action log to get some.
Well, I mean, producing a cost-benefit analysis would be a lot of work as well. So, I mean, whether or not that's something that
I did say high level.
Yeah, but it's not currently on the list of strategic priorities.
Understood.
So it would be something that I think would be should come back if you want to. If we're going to have that discussion, it should come back to the next strategic planning meeting for further discussion.
Okay.
If I could just interject, I think it was 2005 the last time that it was explored and decided not to move. So it was somewhere around there if you wanted to check in the research.
Mr. Cave, breaking from tradition, but I'll give you 30 seconds if you got a point to make.
Yeah, the urban containment boundary is not the same as Metro Vancouver.
No.
No.
So that's just my only point. So, for example, there's a gap between West Vancouver and Lions Bay. That gap is not part of the urban containment boundary. So Pasco Road or Ocean View Place, those residents along there, they're not part of that.
Yeah, I think the map was attached to the one of the clicks on the survey.
Yeah, it was a link.
One of the links. I think at council, I think everyone understands what the urban containment boundary looks like, where that black line goes. Certainly, if anyone doesn't, I could help them out. The next action in number 4, and this relates to a significant number of people who were suggesting we grandfather existing installations and sort of, I guess, future-proof ourselves by changing over time. And I think that the two things I think we can do there is, well, I think the effective thing we can do there is the next time we're looking at our building bylaw, I think we should have it as a discussion point that future installations we only allow compliant.
You would have to check whether or not under the new building act, whether that is an item over which local government can regulate, or whether that has been swallowed by the province in terms of regulatory ability. So I'll be looking at the building bylaw in any event, and looking at it and talking with our legal counsel and MIA about it in a couple of weeks when I go to the risk management conference.
It almost seems like a bit of a no-brainer. You shouldn't allow people to continue to do something that in future, this might come up again, and you've allowed them to go put in something that you're then going to force them to change.
Yeah.
It just seems like we should be able to change
I
it.
agree that it's something that should be explored. I'm just not 100% sure that we can actually do that.
The other point is, pretty soon you won't be able to buy a non-compliant insert wood stove in Vancouver because there's going to be no market for them if this gets passed.
Yeah.
I went on Craigslist, I think.
Except that people may still build homes with fireplaces, open fireplaces, so.
That's the part you'd have to get into the bylaw, so that the new building bylaw. The fifth action was there were several people that spoke about how to burn wood well. I know how to use your wood properly, the seasoning. I know we've done this before. I just want to put an action. We should maybe every October roll out the last one we did, or the best one. I think you did one once, Fred. We could get something together and every October try to remind people.
I think we have a page on the website that I put together on proper burning of wood.
Yeah, so the information's available. But I'm saying a village update every October. By the way, season starts, refresh yourself, go here. Or if anything's changed, we just do it annually, make it an annual thing so we can get improve people's use of their wood. The last one, and once again, I'm not sure this is an easy one. So I was told by one resident that in the 90s, BC Hydro abandoned a program they had that allowed for dual metering of houses with wood heat. And one of our residents, who's in the correspondence, has this in his home. So it's very Stretsky. He has 2 meters. He doesn't pay second tier hydro, the way I understand. He believes there's more people in the village that got it. Metro had this in place for areas that didn't have gas and then abandoned in the 90s. Sounds like something that might be worth a kick at. Why can't this come back? It'd be a huge benefit to this village.
I don't quite follow having 2 meters. How does that work?
I think his heaters are on one, the way I understood it.
I recall something,
His heaters are on one, the rest of his house is on the other.
there was a letter put out by a former mayor a few years ago about contacting Hydro, and I don't remember what the end date was. It was 2014 or 2015, talking about this subject again, about 2-tier because of the lack of natural gas. So I agree, it is something to look into.
I'll get some more details on Mr. Shrisky's system, and he's knowing him, he's probably got some
It was
files
Doug
and paper
Miller.
on it.
It was Douglas Miller, who, he put out a letter a few years ago trying to get people to reach out to
Okay.
Hydro, but when I found it, it had already passed the expiry date.
Alrighty.
Okay, that's
Thank
it.
thank you very much, and we'll just do the technical part then. So we'll go to discussion, and we can I do the free-for-all on the 6 recommendation points. So if I can, I'll put forward the motion to receive the office coordinator's report and Councillor Abbott's report. Can I have a second? Thank you. The discussion, I'm going to guess nothing from the office coordinator's report. And if we zero in on page 3 of Councillor Abbott's, the 6 recommendations, my note taking kind of went like this. Number 1 is to write to Metro requesting exemption be granted along with the others who are outside the UCB, including a copy of the survey and summary of results. CAO, can the staff provide that for us to send off to Metro?
Yeah, we could draft something.
Okay, I've already talked to Chair of Climate Action, we've got something coming, and I'll alert Director Kwan the same thing too. Okay, so that's number 1. So if we could see that maybe by the next meeting, that'd be great. Is that okay?
Yep.
Yep, thank you. Or however it comes to me, that's fine. Number 2, you guys were, Councillor Abbott and staff were arm wrestling over number 2.
So, sorry, before
So
you
go
move on
back-
to
can I go
2,
back to number 1.
Yep.
Do we need to wait for the next meeting, or do we want to get this off?
The results are conclusive to me. I don't know whether staff wants, sorry, I don't know whether council wants to see the stuff or not, or you can
I think I'll just
go,
like
but
we
to go
should
right for the, we can go right to the motion if you want.
get it, if we can get it in before they start the discussion.
Well, fine, but
As Metro,
it's also, I think, one call to the chair and say, just delay this for 2 weeks until we've got our stuff here.
Mhm.
So, what would your preference be, CAO?
we can start getting the letter together.
Okay,
I'll call on Councillor Abbott if I need some assistance.
okay,
with
so
that.
that'll come forward.
But that's, I don't think you've made a motion second.
We haven't made a motion to,
Did
well, I
that be
think the
done?
motion is to request exemption be granted along with the others who are outside the UCB. And that's the primary motion, the rest is filler. My technical advisors can do a motion.
That a letter be written to Metro.
That a letter be written.
Et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. Second? Discussion? Call a motion, all in favor? Good, unanimous, thank you. So staff, thank you for that. So that'll get out and council will get copied when they get copied. Thank you very much, Councillor Abbott, I appreciate the haste. Number 2, investigate the option of falling outside the UCB, and I think, like I said, this is where the arm wrestle was. I think staff wants this. Councillor Abbott, I suggest you let go.
Well, okay, so this, I'm realizing this would require an amendment to Metro's regional growth strategy. So that's a very, very involved process, which is all laid out in the Local Government Act under section Part 14 planning. I think that in the first instance, I would like to explore, just make the inquiries as to get from Metro in clear terms what would be required in order to effect that change, but at the same time get a bit of the history as to why we are in it and what the rationale was and what the pros and cons are of being in or out. So I think we need to thoroughly understand that.
Yeah.
So I think I would
Could we move
offer
this
to
to
proceed to.
follow-up action item?
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, so Carol, item number 2, for the next one will be one of these. Okay, thank you. All right, thank you, CAO. Are you fine with that, Councillor Abbott?
Councillor Bain.
I have a question about that. I'm wondering if we did get the option of falling outside the UCB, pardon me, would that not help our bid to get recognized as rural in the provincial government's eyes?
Possibly.
So that would, along that line then, would that put more of a priority on number 2? Or is it
Yeah, I
just
mean,
too difficult?
I can basically raise that as part of the submission on the rural dividend funding support. You know, ask for further feedback and clarification on the UCB,
Okay,
all the aspects of it.
perfect.
Perfect, thank you. So on item number 3, and the objective here is to either assign something for the future or move this to the unfinished business piece. So I think on the third one for Councillor Abbott, resident questions about being part of Metro Vancouver. Staff's quick response is that a report is a report, and this would be lengthy and probably is not on their top list of things to do at this moment.
Well, I would suggest that it be brought back to the next strategic planning session, and council can determine whether or not it makes the list or not. In the interim, we would dig up whatever there is that was looked at previously and bring it at that time, so council can have a look at anything that was there.
I would be fine with that. I think, I mean, the financial piece of this, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, CFO, it's either TransLink or Metro. When we pay 43 or 53, and technically, for what I get paid for director's fees, attending the variety of meetings, financially, we don't receive anything else, but we're part of the regional piece here, and it's hard to put a value on that. In short.
Yeah, I think those are all questions that need to be
Okay.
raised as part of the issue when it's brought
Okay,
up.
so I think if we could, however we put this off to the, so my suggestion would be put this off to our next strategic,
Yeah.
if that could be tapped in there in the file somewhere under your desk, CAO, do you know? Okay. Fine, review and revise the building bylaw. I think CAO, you talked about that just a little bit.
Yeah, I'll review opportunities.
Have you stopped talking, or am I hearing?
No, I'm stopped.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. Nothing else.
Nothing else? Okay, moving on. Educate the residents. I happen to have the calendar right here. It's already on the calendar for October. So that's done. Number 6.
Oh, can I ask
Yes.
a question on number 5? I've heard, not a number, but a couple of residents complaining that some of their neighbors put out an excessive amount of smoke. Like, I think number 5 does address that, but I think we should start thinking about what do we do if somebody continually, after all the advice and education, continually emitting huge amounts of particulate. Like, I understand when a stove first starts up, it's gonna smoke, but some people damper it down too soon and smoke out the neighborhood, because there's a few neighborhoods that do not have as good an air exchange as others. So I'm not sure where to go with this on how do we resolve that problem.
The neighbor bylaw?
Smoke police.
So if I could just answer that in the survey we just got back, I think there may have been 3, but I'm going to say there was only 2 people that actually specifically spoke about bad air, implied it came from bad practice of a neighbour. Wasn't that many.
Well, there was a particular neighborhood where that seemed to be prevalent.
There's an issue
Yes.
in one particular neighbourhood.
Mhm. You know, it would be difficult for us, I'm pretty sure we would not be able to enforce that as under good neighbor bylaw, but I'm already asking a few questions of our legal counsel with respect to that bylaw, so maybe I'll just add that to the list. You know, a person has a private law right of action for nuisance against someone who's causing a nuisance, and that could be classified as a nuisance and may very well be actionable. So if somebody was refusing to comply or clean up their act or burn cleanly or responsibly, then I don't think the municipality would have that right of action, but a neighbor would.
Okay.
Okay, last item of page 3 of 3 is the fascinating hydro. Was this the first thing we could dig into the archives?
Should I try get some better details from the source where I got the idea from? Would that help?
Okay.
Peter?
Mm-hmm, sure.
Are you fine with a takeaway on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, done. All right, so we've received an action item, so we received the reports. We have. The action items are done, so they're either been dealt with now, taken away by staff, or they're going to appear on the unfinished business. Moving along, and in the spirit of, I should have communicated this sooner, the next one was me, which was municipal signage. I will strike that. Shame on me for bringing it up sooner. It was on the other side of the page for. But you owe me one next time something drops, so I wasn't aware of. Okay, so the next one, Mayor, which is the Mayor's Reports B. Two things. One, the Events Committee updates. Two things. The Events Committee is going to, they are in the throes already, they're organizing and marshalling. They're going to have a gala event on June the 27th at a private residence, and the sole purpose is to fundraise for the Lions Bay Beach improvement. The tickets are not thrifty, but they think they're going to sell 200 of them, and that will be a big number. I'm going to talk about it for the first time on Friday in a Save the Date, not to steal it from Councillor Cunliffe, on Save Another Date, which is much closer. A piece of this is, I'm going to guess, I think the East Events Committee would give naming rights to every blade of grass and flower if they thought they'd get $50 for it. But I think part of the conversation we're going to have, the initial group is CFO Rook and I, and one of the executive from the EC is tax receipts and naming rights, and just give them some general direction. Enough on that. That's just a one-way thing. And the other one is the village update rotation, which beautiful bumblebee, just in terms of the month, and that would be the Gypsy Cuckoo bumblebee, for those who are not familiar with it. So today, Friday's article is by me, and that is New Moon Day.
Can I, as mine was not put in last week, can I put mine in?
Of course.
Because I did write an article. It just was the second attachment that I think was missed.
Okay, so.
And it would be a kickoff to Volunteer Week, which is coming up next week.
Perfect.
Is that okay?
Yes, well, of course.
I don't think we saw anything.
It came as in
It
two
came
different
in a-
attachments. So there was one attachment which was what was published, and then second to that was another little attachment that the article was in. But it formatted kind of oddly, so I don't know. It
Got lost.
say la vie, yes.
Okay.
But it,
Which, I was quiet when I didn't see it, because I was expecting it.
yeah,
And I
well, it was
thought-
there. It
And then
just,
it came, a second impulse came, and I saw buried in the back of the community news was the Save the Date thing, which was a little tombstone-y thing.
well, you know, but it is, since it's Volunteer Week next Monday, if we put it out on Friday, then it's good timing.
Is it,
Apropos.
There we are.
is it practical when someone's writing the primary part of the village update to get to a quick proofread or review before it goes out, so we don't kind of miss something like this?
Yeah.
Well, that being said,
Either
I,
myself or Pam proofs the
I
village
didn't
update
leave much
every week,
time.
but we don't necessarily, I didn't see the email, so.
No, I'm not talking, I mean, the previous one that I wrote out, I didn't like the way it'd been truncated, that wasn't what I understood it was going to be. Just those kind of things, if you're not available, we're not available, but if we are, can we get a chance to look at it before it goes
You
out?
want to see your
Oh,
own before it
you-
goes out?
Yeah, we got my own, yeah.
Okay.
Or in this case,
That could be.
if Jamie got to see hers, she would have said,
because-
oh, you missed something.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have seen it though.
Are you talking about impulse to the whole update?
no,
Or just your article?
their article, I think, is.
Well, it's just, I mean, I always, maybe the mayor gets different treatment, but I
I
get,
think how it looks in the village update is the question, like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
the article, it's how it looks like when it's
Okay.
in the village update.
all right, well, it's a staff issue identified here, so.
So, but, okay, so just to sort of talk about this for a second, since it's on the table. Generally speaking, long articles, we tend to truncate, after a certain amount and say, to read more, ... click here. And so, I guess you didn't know that
I didn't know there was that.
that's sort of
Because
what could happen.
I would have rewritten it. I would have put it differently to
Yeah.
make sure the first part at least had the key bullet points of what we were talking about,
Right.
not click to find out. Had I known it was going to be truncated, I would have rewritten
Right.
it.
Okay, so, now, I think it's probably more of a lesson learned for both of us. But, if there's a desire that something not be truncated.
Imagine what Mayor Burr would
then we
have
have that conversation. But a lot of times, we're under the gun because it's a Friday where we're
As I said,
getting the agenda out.
As I said, if
and
the person's not available,
We're looking-
you snooze,
we're
you
looking
lose.
at
But if
trying
you are
to do that.
available,
Well, I think
It's 4 o'clock, 4:30,
The
Sean is
key
rushing.
deal
to
here
get
is that I've been pushing for the
So-
Wednesday noon cutoff for in and then say goodbye to it. And I think staff has generously said Thursday noon, and I think sometimes it slips past that. So for the council members, let's try for
Try
Wednesday.
much harder.
But the finished product isn't done until Friday.
No,
So,
but that's-
and that's
that's a
what,
work in
that's what they're
progress,
talking about,
Yeah.
is
Talking about
is
the
seeing the
finished
finished
product,
product. And
Oh.
I'm just
It'd
saying
be tight.
that Friday afternoons are often a gong show, and really, we're rushing on a lot of different things. So, can try, but I want to talk to staff about that one.
okay.
Okay.
I'm good.
How long is your article? 16?
Not super long.
Good. Am I
Did,
first or you first? What do you want to do? Me to lead to you?
Yeah, that's,
Because that way I'll double promote it.
okay, sure thing.
I mean,
Yeah, no, it's
if
not
people
long.
read-
It's not.
People read the first thing
I
and
was
the other
gonna
scroll, done.
Put it maybe as a click on is a list of all of the identified
Okay.
committees, that'll be the largest part of the article.
Done.
Did the invites go out though to the different contacts
I'm
of the
waiting to
different
get
groups?
those contacts from Sean. She asked me yesterday, I got an email from her and I said, yes, I don't have the list.
So I thought she sent you an email this morning confirming, and then, I thought she had sent them to you.
She said she might have, and I
Okay.
haven't seen it
Okay.
yet. But yes, no, she emailed me yesterday about that. I didn't get back to her till this morning, so.
Right, and then I believe once you clarified
Once
that you
I-
were going to send them out,
Yes,
I'll
well-
double check, but I thought she had, maybe you haven't seen it yet. Hopefully she sent them to you.
Okay.
So you can get it out.
If not, we'll get it out.
Alrighty, so it's Yumi on Friday the 5th, which is New Moon Day. The following Friday, it's Councillor Bain, which is the One Tooth, Yvonne Cornway's old number, which is, it's not a particularly wonderful day that day, but that's okay. So that's the 12th. The following weekend is the Good Friday's the 19th. So my suggestion is that we leave staff alone that week, and that if staff's got anything they want to pump out on the 18th for the 19th, they do that.
Yeah, we'll be putting out the day before, on a
So,
long weekend.
yeah.
Okay, well, however you do it, so that week is your week,
The auditors are
so
here.
councillors don't send anything that week. The follow-up, which is the third quarter of the moon, which is the 26th, and also Arbor Day, that's Councillor Abbott. It is also the celebration of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster, which occurred in 1986.
I think celebration is probably the wrong adjective.
I would agree with that. Maybe recognition, but
Actually, disaster is a good word here. Okay, and then I've also got Councillor Barmere on the following month on the 3rd, which is World Press Freedom Day. The 10th is up for grabs, and the 17th is Councillor Cunliffe, who might be talking about the school. This will be in your minutes next time you get together. Okay, we're good. Anybody else want another date? Oop, oop, good. Thank you. And that takes care of the mayor. Now we're down to Councillor Abbott on the request for decision proposed Metro Vancouver. I think we're covered there. Yes, thank you. And Citizen of the Year, you're next up on item number 2. Citizen of the Year, Citizen of Distinction, which you may not have done anything, but I want it down here because you got 90 days.
Okay.
Okay. And I think we were going to go to the community looking for names if you didn't have a pocket full.
Yes, that was my
Good.
expectation. But
Good.
do we need to talk about that?
Shoot.
That's not, I'm told that's not the way it's done.
No, it's your topic. Let's go. Which I gave you.
Thank you.
We generally just brought up names and closed.
Yeah, previously, council has simply, in closed meeting, put forward different names of different people for one award or the other. And that discussion has taken place, maybe candidates narrowed down, discussions had between, somebody be assigned to go talk in person, whatever, do follow up. But, so that's how it's been done in the past.
Yeah. So what puzzled me about that is how we got to decide who were the names, because I don't think there's anyone at the table here that knows 1,500 residents and some real worthy person somewhere out there that you don't necessarily know about. I don't think we know. So my suggestion was we put out a short citizen year, citizen distinction, what the difference between the two is. And I'm vague on that completely, so I need some help there. Put forward nominees, one page, 30 lines or 300 words or something to that effect.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got something, and I think we're going to find, hopefully we're going to find someone that's not part of the same.
There have been no repeat winners, so your point is taken. And I think to expand on where the CIO is going, certainly in my 7 years of this, the number of selections have come forward been small, all worthy of the recipients, but I think we have not engaged the community in any broad way, which is what a surprise, which is why I've asked you to deal with this. I think examples that I can think of are West Vancouver that solicit in the North Shore News, and so you can look at what their stuff looks like, and looking for people to put names forward.
Well, I think if that's the direction that council would like to go with this, then staff will put forward a request for nominations, or persons interested in nominating, have a little blurb about each of the awards, what they're about, and parameters, and what kind of person and qualities they should have, and see what we get. And we'll bring it back to council, and you can peruse them in closed and determine where you go from there.
With Councillor Abbott's nodding, he's got my vote. Are you good?
I'm good with it.
Good, all right, so 90 days away, so allowing for what I recall is the annual thing for getting plaques done in time and stuff like that.
Right.
So we want to,
Put it out sooner than later.
Sure.
60 days is kind of our number, allowing 2 weeks to rush around, and then that, okay. Thank you very much to staff. Councillors Cunliffe Abbott, same 90 days for Canada Day.
I put the call out to the Arts Council. I have not heard a word back. I know their AGM is this coming Saturday, so it might be a point of discussion then. If not, I would say there's not an appetite for it on their behalf. They are doing the Arts and Garden Festival this year, so
I think, fair enough, clearly the events committee is hosting their gala event 4 days before, so either they pre-thought what they were doing, skillful little bunch, and they would rather do their own big gala deal than doing the community thing for that particular day for Canada Day, so I'm fine with that. So I think
They were still going to.
They're still doing Canada Day.
they're doing the
Yeah,
evening
the only-
thing,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's
Just the
so,
chop
it's the
chop
whole
thing.
day thing.
yeah.
So I think
For
we
the
need to
morning.
figure out where we fit in that tiny little start thing before they do their thing.
I would say, because I don't, no one's jumping on taking over Canada Day.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so I tell you what, let's just keep it as how about we move that to unfinished business then? Because I just don't want
So
to lose track of it.
the only question I then have in the new Canada plans, and the only reason my name was here was, traditionally that was when scholarship awards were
Yeah,
given out.
presented.
So in their new plan, are they allowed for that, or?
Yes, they have.
They have?
Yeah.
Yeah, and they
So-
have to, because I've committed to it in the candidate grant
So-
application. They've committed to
Okay.
doing it,
There's kind
but
of a,
later.
let's call it for the
Yeah.
sake of argument, a civic 20 minutes or half an hour kind of thing, and then there
So
we go.
we don't really have to do anything because they're still doing it. They're just not doing the
Yeah.
whole day.
It's just
Okay,
the
so-
child part that's gone. Well, not suggest, I'm not dismissing it, but the bouncy castle and the stuff for the children in the morning, that's gone. And it might be a good year to test to see what the reaction to missing that, because there still is the opportunity to go into North Vancouver.
But we're not even the mountains and the flag
Celebrations.
raising and all that either.
That would be up to the guys.
I assume that was going to happen at the
Which-
5 o'clock, like
Oh,
it
that's
starts
good,
at
okay.
5 to
Yeah,
9.
so I
having the-
suspect that's where it's going to be, in that 5 o'clock, instead of having your hot dog and cake and balloons and face painting. That's all ixnayed on that, and if you come at 5 and do the civil ceremony thing, and then it goes to the events
Fireworks.
committee thing, it's all theirs.
Bring your own picnic and fireworks and just all in the evening.
Since it would appear, how about we do this, if it's okay with Councillors Cunliffe and Abbott, since I seem to be involved with the events committee on this other issue, I'm sure I could, with small work the Canada Day piece in, and I would be happy to take it away from both of you if that's
It's
fine.
all yours.
Done.
Done, okay, thank you.
So just to clarify, in terms of working it in, like the agenda has been set for the evening. I only know because I worked on the Canada Day grant.
Okay, well,
So
there we
I
go,
think
so
in their
it's
mind it's done. And they
it's-
confirmed it when they came in for their municipal
Okay,
grant
well, let's just-
presentation.
rehash what the half hour of our time looks
Okay,
like.
yes.
Okay, that's really
Okay.
all I'm talking about.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, done. Do you wish to talk about volunteer week or no?
No, there's not, I got some numbers from Shauna today of what the past, attendance was, so I'm hoping that we definitely expand on that. I've talked with Nye briefly about the setup. The only really missing piece would be like a bullhorn or something of the sort, just to have like a speech of some sort given by you. Or do you feel comfortable just standing there speaking loudly enough?
I can speak loudly enough.
Then we don't take
Although-
that part out of it, make it easy.
So I just had a question, the invitations. We were just a bit concerned, we were talking to Louis and some of the volunteers and they didn't know anything about it. So,
Because I haven't had, I
okay.
didn't have anybody's email addresses.
Okay, sorry, just when you had said you just listed things left to do, you didn't include the invitation,
Oh,
so I
yes,
just wanted
no,
to make
that will,
sure.
that will happen.
You remember to invite
And
people.
the liquor license has been approved, it just needs to be paid for. I had to get a license for the hall and for the beach.
Oh,
You
you did.
can't attach them to one. So we canceled the one we're not using the day of, but unfortunately we eat the cost, which was $25. So it was unavoidable. And outside of that, we've got the food in discussion. I'll talk to you about your duty.
You're killing me.
And,
All right, it's fair enough to say that Councillor Cunliffe, like in her real life, is a fluid person. So we just need to be ready for that fluidity to be.
yeah, if you have any specific questions or concerns,
I have one question.
Yeah.
When were you going to make the call on the weather? I know that's a tough one. Like, would you decide the day of if it was raining or the day before?
no, I
or-
will look at the forecast. I
Yeah.
don't want you guys setting something up on Thursday, having it pour rain Friday, and then me say, oh, whoops. No, we'll definitely take into, if it looks dreary, we'll just plan for the hall.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll do like a 72-hour.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that's, yeah,
that's
we don't need
fantastic.
that much.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Okay.
I was thinking just like even the day before.
Yes,
Would be
before
enough,
you set
yeah.
anything up, we will know
We'll check
where
with
it's
you.
set up is
Yeah.
where it will occur. We will not make you move
Okay.
things around.
All right, thank you, and thank you, and I'll wait for your call, text, or email.
Excellent.
Councillor Bean,
Yeah, just a note that House Island Community Forum is meeting on April 26th, this time at Camp Firkham on Gambier Island. And if anybody was wanting to go, I think there's an opportunity to get your name down on the list. And
I already RSVP'd for that one.
Positively or negatively?
Positively,
Oh, okay.
yes.
Yeah, it's just a short hop across the pond for us. Unfortunately, it's kind of tough for people working during the day, but I haven't spoken to the Admiral, but I'm kind of thinking it'd be kind of fun to take a boat over there. We'll see.
Weather call?
Yeah. Anyhow, we'll leave it at that for now.
We're done, thank you. Committees, none. Emergency services, none. Resolutions, none. Bylaws. Who doesn't love a good 5-year financial plan bylaw number 560, 2019? The motion is that the 2019-2023 5-year financial plan bylaw number 560, 519 be read a first and second time. And do I have to read the whole thing? CO?
The whole bylaw? No.
Good, thank you. All right. So, okay, so it's all on page 97 of 184, where we've given the text. Okay, we can move those flags. So, motion for first reading? Sure. Thank you. Second? Discussion? Call the question. All in favor? Councillor Abbott?
I think my concerns about this have been raised already, so,
I think you're papered on the other one pretty strong.
yeah. So we're reading this for the first and second time,
Yes.
and try to convince people to read just once and to take more time and get some definition, none of which is going to happen. It's been clear. It's much. I struggle with I'm being asked to vote, and I actually fundamentally agree with this 10%. I just don't fundamentally agree about how we're going there. I don't know. Anyone got any advice for me? What am I saying? I mean, we're reading it for the first and second time. We're going to read it one more time. What am I? Am I objecting to reading the first and second time? What does that mean? I don't really know what I'm doing.
Sometimes with a bylaw, it could be, let's say there's a contentious zoning bylaw, but, and a councillor is unsure as to whether or not this really ought to be adopted or not. But it certainly seems to be the case that it ought to go forward for the next stage of the process, which in the case of a zoning bylaw would be a public hearing. So that councillor might very well say, okay, I vote in favor of first and second reading so that this can move forward in the process. It doesn't mean that that councillor is going to vote in favor of the bylaw when it comes to third reading or adoption, but just willing to let it move forward at this point and then deal with where it's at the next time it comes back. So that's one option for you.
Mm-hmm.
The other option is to simply say no. You're opposed, not in terms of the bylaw itself, but in terms of the manner in which it's been brought forward or arrived at this point. So
That's
either,
exactly
either of those two
Okay, so
options,
That's what I'm
I
saying.
certainly understand you taking either of those.
So the second one is exactly where I am. So exactly where I am. I'm not opposed to the bylaw.
Mhm.
I'm opposed to. I feel it's been expedited, and we have chance for more discussion. So that's my position. If you want to call it that way, it's fine.
So then I'll record your vote as opposed.
Thank you. So it's Councillor Abbott opposed. To read it the second time, can I have a motion to read the second time? Thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. Thank you, Councillor Bain. For the second, any discussion? Councillor Abbott, I presume I repeat.
Yep.
Thank you. Call the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Abbott opposed. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much all. And not that I suspect Councillor Bain's going to be slow, because I know he's like a jackrabbit out of the hole. I've seen that power boat of his surge to 6 knots once in a while. Anyhow, so this is on page 101 of 184. My suggestion for Councillor Bain, but he can do what he wants, is from R6 to R29, we show as received. And I will take away number R5 and comment on that. And there you go.
You jumped me on that one. I was going to suggest R6 to 29. It seems rather redundant after our conversation. So, if I may.
Please.
We've got G1 from the City of Victoria resolution. It's unfortunate that sometimes people put a couple of, or 3 things into a resolution, and I guess the thinking is that you go for all 3 of them, but not each an individual, and I suppose. I have a problem with this one. Like shifting investment to low emission transportation, it's sort of, feel good sort of thing, a good idea and everything, but the one I'm struggling with is they've got observed inhalation sites for overdose prevention and a safer drug supply to save lives in British Columbia. Well, it sounds innocent in itself, but they're talking about issues of addiction. And I have a real problem with that if you just observe somebody taking their drugs and everything and thinking somehow you're making life better for them. And I felt this for a long time, like safe injection sites, I question. And over the weekend I saw a KOMO News article from Seattle titled "Seattle is Dying." And they've had a very soft approach to people with addictions, and they were finding in this program that a huge number of the people who are on the street right now, it isn't the case of they can't afford a home, they can't pay the mortgage. They become drug addicted and their life's gone to pot. No pun intended. The problem is the police aren't able to enforce the laws. There's repeat criminals to trying to pay for the drug habits. The court system and judiciary puts them in for a couple of days, then puts them back out on the street, and there's no intervention at all. And now Seattle is looking terrible. I won't repeat the terms that were used on it, but there's garbage and everything. There's these tent little towns all over the place, and it's turning into a dump. Well, the thread of the article was that without intervention, you're not doing these people any good at all. In fact, how can you say that is caring and loving of a community towards people who are struggling? And they were suggesting using a Rhode Island model called Kodak, with a C, C-O-D-A-C, who've had tremendous success in getting drug addicts and opioid addictions under control, where the people can actually return to a normal life. And my concern with this is what I think Victoria is advocating doing by these first 2 items of the 3 is going down the same path Seattle went, and I wouldn't want to see those consequences happening to our capital city. So, long story short, I would not want to support this correspondence or this action. I think the outcome is predictable, and it's not very nice. So, I'll start editorializing and let anybody else have their comments.
My comment would be not to respond.
Fair enough. If everybody's agreeable with that. If I could just add, if anyone wants to see the Seattle dying thing, I just found it is also on YouTube now, if they ever are interested in finding out the problem with Seattle and the solutions for the problem. But anyhow, no response.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us up to G2 on page 13, about property assessment and taxation systems. He's got a lot of stuff here. I guess we can just receive it. I'm not sure how effective this would be, quite frankly. I'd like to hear more to find out something, if it's, I don't know. It's how they want to change the assessments and stuff. I don't know. I would recommend we receive it with no response. I don't think there's really anything to respond to.
Thank you. Anybody have opposing views? Nope, accept.
Okay, and down to G3, request local government to support quarry. This has to do with Coalition of Riders Educating Youth, which is what Corey stands for. They're concerned about fatalities of new drivers of motorcycles, and education and everything like that is great for young bikers to learn. But there's nothing mentioned about attitude, and that I don't think is trainable. It's modeled more than anything. Being a former youthful motorcycle enthusiast myself, I know there is a real temptation to do very stupid things on a motorcycle, and that is the main cause of it. And I'm not sure education is the whole solution, but it's certainly a good start. So I think it's worth encouraging that. But I don't know. Not much to respond on.
It's about graduated licenses. I have no response.
Yeah.
Unless it's an opposing view, we'll move on.
And over to R1, forest fires. Where did it go here? Page 24. Oops, here we are. We've got a issue, concerned resident about forest fire prevention and wanting to pretty well get together with others and talk about the problem. I would recommend informing the residents that it is a good idea. We already have an interface fire study dated 2006, and that would be a good starting point. They'll probably find it answers most of their questions. It's the interface, I forgot.
Wildfire Management Protection Plan.
Thank you.
2007.
2007?
Yeah,
Okay.
pretty sure. Oh, could be wrong, but I think it's 2007.
It's got my name on it. I quit in 2006, so I kind of, anyhow, that's not bad. Okay, how should we respond to this one?
What did you think they were asking to do? I mean, when I first read this, I thought they were asking permission to go out and perform a vigilante police review of the neighbourhood and tell people what to do. And then the second time I read it, I'm not sure that's what I got. So what are they actually asking us?
Well, in the fourth paragraph, they're saying, we therefore urge council to be proactive and takes whatever steps it can to minimize both the possibility of fire affecting the village, but also steps to ameliorate worsening of any fire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think we've already done that, although there's more we could do. But again, it comes down to money.
I'm looking at the last paragraph.
Yeah, the options for consideration seem to be a little bit beyond the scope of what I would support or advocate for. You know, we have tools in the toolbox with respect to properties that appear to be a fire hazard or risk.
Mm-hmm.
When we have reports of those kinds of properties, we do ask the fire chief to go by, or members of the fire department to check it out and assess that risk, and if necessary, write a letter to the homeowner. I'd be concerned about an ad hoc group of residents going around and opining on the status of people's properties and whether or not, in their opinion, it presents a fire hazard. Certainly, if anyone has that kind of concern, they can report it to the municipality, either via the feedback form, emailing us, or even a complaint form if they feel that the property is in such a state that it ought to be enforced against, and violating bylaws and a hazard to others. So there are options for individuals to do that, but I'd be wary of the municipality supporting a group like this forming for specific purposes and making recommendations to the village to pursue people.
Well, I would agree enthusiastically with that because from my perspective, the understanding of fire and interface fires and woodland fires takes a lot of experience and understanding of fire behavior. I really question whether somebody with no training would really have much to offer on it. And further to that, I think our fire department is well trained on interface firefighting. I think we've done all we can at this point for what we can do, other than what you're suggesting about people reporting sites.
Well, I don't think that we've done all we can do. I'm not saying that. I would say that there are further things we can do in terms of education and in terms of promoting the safe fire practices that are advocated through, I'm drawing a blank. Fire smart practices, you know. A little bit of reminders about some of what those practices entail, and that in and of itself may result in some people cleaning up properties or thinking about it, particularly as we approach a long, hot, dry summer. So I expect that we're going to have some various different communications coming out in the next little while having to do with water conservation, and I think we'll have a piece as well on fire smart practices and a few other things. So bylaw enforcement, we've got a few things coming down the pike, but I think that we can tie fire protection and water conservation in the same pieces. We'll have a series of things coming up.
Maybe we can consider.
So, Councillor Bain, are you offering to write and the CAO to edit and send it off to the resident?
Can do.
Thank you.
That was quick.
Just kind of thought arising from this, closing of the trails when the fire hazard becomes extreme. Are we not allowed to do that? Did we used to always do it? Was it? Why don't we do that anymore?
Do what?
Close the trails.
Because we don't have the authority to do that.
So in all the previous years we did it without authority,
Yeah.
even with the RCMP support. One stage they parked a cruiser there.
Well, if you've got RCMP support, then you've got authority. But, you know, where did that come from? They would have had to have permission from the Crown. And as I understand it, because I did explore this with Ministry of Forests, Lands and Resources, is there was only 1 year where they agreed to proceed with that, with closing trails, and I was told they'll never do it again. And I forget all the reasons, but there was a lot of different aspects of it that they reviewed after the fact and determined that they would not do that again. And they pointed me at the regulatory bases upon which they have the ultimate control and that we do not. Because I argued a little bit that there was certain gaps in what I perceive to be the regulatory authority, but I was referred to someone else who referred me to further regulations and so forth. So they pretty much shut down my argument. But
Did that come back to council? Is there something like agreed on that?
no, not really. Yeah. We just talk at the time about can we shut down the trails. But the answer is no. So what we can do is educate, and we do have Public Works goes up and puts up signage that we get from the Ministry of Forests. No fires and such.
Campfire bans,
But beyond that, we do not have the authority to shut down the trail.
All right, Councillor Bain, R2.
R2 is from a resident about PACE program. I've got a fair amount of documentation with it. Mayor has already responded to him. I'm not sure if that is the length of your response to him.
Well, I just said thank you in your items in correspondence, but I know that the CAO has a point of view on this one.
Oh, sorry, it's been a little bit since I looked at it, but
126 of 184. I think that this is a very lofty goal,
right.
and I think it's quite a stretch.
Well, it's development of a template. Lobbying FCN to assist with developing support mechanisms, which is great if they do that. But yeah, I don't think it's something that we need to pursue ourselves.
There we go, I share that view. I'm happy to write back to Mr. Pavel and advise him that. Okay,
Just sort of wait and see what they do with FCM and respond then, maybe.
there we go.
Yeah, I mean, if there's programs that come down the pike, that's certainly things that we can look at.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to R3 on page 40. We had the gentleman replying to or commenting on his recovering climate costs issue. Councillor McLaughlin has responded and gave him an answer, so no further response needed, I would suspect.
Thank you.
And on R4, another resident, Lower Calvary Grove issue on page 42. He was a delegation recently, or participation about some issues in Lower Calvary Grove. Have we not responded to him on this?
No, this, I won't tell you the reason this was hand-delivered to me, but it was, and so it came into correspondence. To take this one, I propose to respond, and it'll be along the lines of the first item, which is the filming. It'll be to say what we've said for the last bit, that there be a film review coming forward to council in due course. Same with the item 2, which is part of the overall parking piece that the CAO is going to do. And I will advise him that number 3, the 40,000, was a death at the budget.
Right.
So if he's fine with that, I will do that. And then we will move on to R5, which is,
So I do have a question. Do we know who took the sign down?
No, there have been a bunch of signs removed.
But there's naked, there's not a sign there.
Yeah, there have been a bunch of signs that have been flipped, so you can't see them anymore, in that old Kelvin Grove neighborhood. So,
The problem doesn't have a single sign on it. Usually
Yeah.
there used to be all sorts of signs on it.
Well, some were.
some were
like,
taken down as
taken
part of the
part of
Action
it.
plan.
parking
Signage.
plan.
So someone has
Redo.
taken them off, turned them around and put them back on?
Somebody has done that, yeah, to some
Someone
of the
just
signs, yeah.
For
And somebody
entertainment.
has also just whited out the wording of the signs.
And which signs?
Just no parking signs. The two green parking arrow signs
Mhm.
have been removed and flipped backwards so you can't see them.
Mm.
They're just showing
Isn't that
plain metal.
interesting?
Yeah.
Especially
And also
those-
somebody's taken off or done away with our TransLink bus
Mm-hmm.
parking,
Signs, yeah.
So
Somebody's-
someone's bored.
park and ride. Sorry.
Mhm.
There we go. Okay, next one up was mine, which was the R5, which I took from Councillor Bean. So the substance of this was twofold. One, it's my discussion regarding solicitation for Councillor Cunliffe's event. The other one was a spying that I did, standing in the sunshine, was that the glass case to the left of the window to the door of the mailroom is got some odds and sods in it. Thinking of greater communication, I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if the village took it over and we maybe cleaned it up a bit, maybe lighted it, and used it for our own communications. And it's locked, so that's the background to it. If I can editorialize before I hand this over to the CAO, there was a staff meeting to this effect, and the staff was of the view that they preferred the existing back of the mailroom wall as the primary conduit. I had suggested and thought about this, but I was not sure whether Councillor Abbott recycled the bird feeder to do the suggestion box in the store. I finally did find the suggestion box with great effort. And so I was thinking naively me that, maybe we might even do something with a little mini podium thingy with a suggestion thing. Bottom line was to enhance communication. The CAO brought up some good points about this being a bad idea, being privacy concerns, and let's say that's the primary one. So I think here the piece is that the owners of this glassed-in case is the strata. The representative has approached the strata suggesting the village would like to take this over and use it for their own communication. So that's where it is on their end. For me, and this is kind of where the discussion is, we'll start with CAO and then go quickly around. I think getting more signage area for us is a good thing, not a bad thing. Taking it over is a minor cleanup, if I can use work's time to say it's minor work. But I kind of see it as an opportunity to showcase things like Volunteer Week. If we had an oversized sign posted there that grabs people's attention, or Canada's Day celebration or a school promotion or something like that, I see it as a low ticket kind of thing to get a big sign there that people are going to walk by at least 80% of the time as they go from the car, and it's just there. And we use it as a just as an extra conduit, and either and I presume that if, let's pick Volunteer Week, that if Councillor Cunliffe is going to get a sign, we tack the sign on there. So my thinking is that that's what we should proceed if the council says yes to, and CAO, you get the comments, and then we'll go around the horn on this one.
Well, I mean, I have to admit that I didn't even realize there was anything there or anything in the case until somebody pointed it out. And it's not something, if you're walking to the post box room, you're on your way to the post box room, and you're not really looking at other things other than cars in the parking lot, people in the parking lot, people on the sidewalk in front of you where you're going. It's on your left, and then you're coming up to the door, and you go into the door. And as soon as you go in the door, right in front of you on the end wall is all the municipal stuff. It's right there in front of you. You can't miss it. So I think it's a lot more visible where it is. There's lots of room up there for us to put things. We have the village update, printed copies there. We have agendas, we have notices, we have posters, we have all kinds of things. Anything to do with volunteer day or other posters, I think that's the place to put it. I think that glass case, you're not gonna look at it unless you know that there's something in there to look at. I mean, if it becomes a habit because it's promoted extensively and people learn that, hey, maybe there's something in there that I'm interested in looking at, they might look, but I don't think, I don't know, I just don't think people are gonna look in that case very much as they're walking to where they're going.
Thank you. I'm going to hold you for a second. Can I have a motion to extend for an hour? Thank you. Second, all in favor? Good. Thank you. Good. Last call, CAO.
No, that's it.
Done. So, question for council, and I would like feedback from everybody, is that if we were offered this, would we like the space? And I'm not stuck on just my vision, but the vision would be not to detract from the back of the mailroom wall, but to use it as a specialty situation for whatever that is. Shall we go clockwise or counterclockwise? Counterclockwise.
Well, I don't feel too passionately either way. I did notice it was there, though. Maybe if it was cleaned up and it was another opportunity for public engagement, why not?
Fair enough.
Double hit outside and inside.
Kind of where I'm thinking too. Councillor Abbott?
Yeah, I do notice there, tried to put stuff in there before, couldn't, was arguing about where's the key, what you can and can't put in there. So I'm aware of it, but I must be honest, I don't look at it because it's not used. So I think potentially, if you did drive traffic there, yeah, it might be a benefit. But we'll give it some thought, and if it comes back, we can have it, then we've got something to discuss. If it comes back, we're not interested, then we'll discuss anyway, I guess.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good. Councillor Bain?
Yeah, I knew it was there, but there's never been anything in there that really caught my eye, so I pretty well ignore it. So, I don't know, maybe if it was done well, it could draw attention. I don't know. Can you do it on a trial basis?
Let's just propose that the strata says, yes, we can take it over. I think I'd be generous and say if it was half an hour of the work's time to clean out the stuff and shop vac the thing, and I'm going to guess if this happened quickly enough, Councillor Cunliffe's going to have a sign made up, I'm sure.
I'm waiting to
I'm
get a
sure you
price
could
on
be the
something,
first one in.
or certainly the lovely ones that Shauna put up. I'm sure we could print something out and put that in.
Here's our first trial.
Lighting? I don't know if there's power there or not.
No and not yet, and I'm not proposing that I don't think the postmaster's the friendliest individual. I don't think we blow into his wall and down to the stuff, so I'm just taking the opportunity as it stands right now.
Solar spotlight?
Well, let's, not to say that people don't pick up their mail in the dark with a gloom, but there we go. My proposal would be that, recognizing the points pro con, that if the strata offers, we accept and do this on a trial basis and see how it works out. If it does, fine. If it doesn't, but the aim is not to do the idea is not to replicate what is on the backboard of the mailroom. It's to do something special, and that could be promotion of the school. I'm sure with their resources they could pump that out, do a nice size thing. They've got their fish thing that's coming up. I'm sure they can do something there. Right off the bat is the fire hazard season, the water tank stuff. I'm not sure whether we might do something oversized there to alert the community more to that. Okay, so if, do I need a resolution for this?
I don't think so.
I don't think
We know
so.
what the plan is.
Okay, I think we know what
If the strata says
yeah,
okay,
Strata says
we'll give it
okay,
a go.
we're gonna dominate the world. Okay, thank you. And so I'll respond to Mr. Doherty on that one, and we'll see that in the next one. Okay, thank you. So can I have a motion to, oh, I guess the last one, Councillor Bean, did you already put the motion to receive our 6 to 29?
No, I was just about to.
Thank you.
I move it.
Done. Can I have a motion to receive the correspondence? Thank you. Second, all in favor? Good, done. Thank you. Moving along to new business, of which there is none. Public questions and comments. 2 minutes if you want. Hope it's good. Okay, thank you. The closed meeting, and I think we can strike number A. I think we kind of already done that. Yes, I think.
Yep.
Okay, so. All right, so going to the close. So the proposed topics for discussion in the absence of the public are sale of 52 Brunswick Beach Road and sale of 35 Kelvin Grove Way. That the council considers the disclosure of information in respect of the sale of 52 Brunswick Beach Road could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and B, a personnel labor relations issue. Okay. That the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered and...
Sorry, before you move on to that one, you read out sale of 52 Brunswick and 35. So you should vote on that, you move it and second it and vote on it, and then move on.
How come your hand wasn't shooting up there, Councillor Abbott? Come on. Sorry, you're my hardballer here. Okay, can I have a motion on the, which should be part A, thank you, Councillor Cunliffe. Second, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes, good. I don't think we do the same thing with number B.
No.
Good, thank you. So now I can read?
No.
Thank
no,
you.
yeah.
That the meeting be closed to the public on the basis of matters to be considered under the following sections of the Community Charter. 91. A part of a council meeting may be closed to the public if the subject matter being considered relates to or is one or more of the following. A, personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the municipality or another position appointed by the municipality. B, personal information about an identifiable... Yes?
We don't need B because it relates to
Oh,
citizen of the year.
good. Strike, thank you. Thank you very much. C, labor relations or other employee relations. E, the acquisition, disposition, or expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and the consideration of whether a council meeting should be closed under a provision of this subsection or subsection 2. Okay, so choices. Council.
No, you want a mover and a seconder for
I.
that.
Where's Shauna? Can you put cheat sheet stuff here? Thank you. Let's do the mayor's idiot notes. Can I have a mover and a seconder on the reasons for close? Thank you. All in favor? Good, done. Okay. I think it's going to be, we are going to be the secondary part. We're going to release information on one of those items.
Mhm.
Yep. So council anticipates reconvening the open meeting to discuss the following items. Should be,
No, well, we're done, we're done.
Okay.
We're not gonna be coming back to discuss.
oh, we're not, okay, actually, we're gonna report them. Okay, done. So for either of these, it's either or, isn't it?
Yeah. So, council does not anticipate reconvening the open meeting for any purpose other than to adjourn the meeting.
Okay, general.
Actually,
Report out, right? I'm most puzzled with this. This doesn't mean we're not going to report out, I'm saying.
No, it's just sort of it's basically trying to be considerate to anyone who's in the meeting, but actually I'm just realizing that should be perhaps a little further up, so that as we're getting ready to close, people are putting on their coats and stuff, and that's when they should be told. I'm gonna move that up.
Okay,
Okay?
so can we move that up and also put crib notes for the mayor in this stuff?
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that your wording, Peter, or is that come from someone?
It basically was from the Auditor General's offices.
Okay,
Okay.
so I believe we've done the motion to close, yes? Carol, yes, good. CFO. 11:07, we are back into the open section. And of the topics that were in the closed council meeting, we would report out from the closed portion of the meeting that yesterday the sale of 52 Brunswick Beach Road occurred. And that would be all we're reporting out. And can I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Kill the switch.